I'm Luke Storey. For the past 22 years, I've been relentlessly committed to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of spirituality, health, psychology, and personal development. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. Angelo Keely, what's happening, brother? Here we are.
Luke Storey, hello.
We're doing the damn thing.
I'm here. Happy to be here.
You're an OG Austinite. You're from where we are recording, where so many of us Texifornians have migrated to. I coined that phrase, by the way. So if you hear it later on in life, this is where it started.
I'll say trademark Luke Storey.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm from here.
Yeah. What was it like growing up here?
It was wonderful. It was really nice. It was really hot. I remember I grew up in a house without AC, kind of like a funky old house. So I would just like sleep in my underwear underneath the fan, like the ceiling fan with no sheets on. But it was good, man. It was smaller. There weren't quite as many people, but literally my entire life, people were always saying like, "Oh, Austin's not the same. Everyone's moving here. It's not the same as it used to be." So I feel like that story is 40 years old.
I think that's true of any mid-sized city. I mean, I guess we're not in a mid-sized city anymore, but any kind of big town or city that kind of catches on or has something unique to offer, I think that's quite common. You know,
Yeah.
oh man, everyone's moving here. It's like, well, do you want an economy or not?
Yeah.
Just like,
It's because the life is good. I mean, that's why
Yeah.
they're moving from somewhere else where there's less opportunity.
yeah, don't make
Yeah.
your city cool if you don't want people,
Yeah.
just more crime,
Yeah.
just make it suck and we won't come. That's why everyone fled. Well, not everyone, but everyone I know practically has fled cities like LA and New York. It's just, you just want to live somewhere safe and relatively clean where you can do your thing in peace.
Austin's still nice. Even like, I stayed in town last night and then drove out to your place, which supposedly is like, when I was a kid, this was kind of like far away. It's like 30-minute drive.
Yeah.
So it's like, the traffic still, people complain about the traffic. It's still like nothing. It's such a pleasant place here.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
the traffic thing is funny when I hear people here complain about it. And I'm sure, compared to 20 years ago or something there is, but I always think, have you ever been on the 405 at 6 p.m. on a Friday? Like, it takes you an hour to get a mile, So I'm like, yeah. But I enjoy it out here,
Yeah,
We
it's-
went on a great hike last time you were here at the green belt near my neighborhood. And I'm just like, this is awesome, man. It's a really beautiful place.
Yeah, that was a beautiful hike. That's a sweet little
Yeah.
spot. And with
Yeah,
that
we went
little-
up to
the
remember the
water
little-
features.
And the little bird watching.
Oh, yeah, the bird
thing.
watching. Yeah.
We had a deep conversation in there about
Yeah.
consciousness and all the things that I like to talk about. All right, so you're back, and you live now in Boulder, Colorado.
That's correct.
Wife, 2 kids,
That's correct.
and you're running this company called Kion.
That's right.
Yeah, and for those watching on the video, this is the company right here. You've probably seen me making my crazy smoothies with all these amino acids and creatine and all the things. I want to go back. I want to focus on a couple key features of your past as I understand them.
Great.
That are just wild to me, and I just love talking about wild shit on this show. There's a couple items in your story that are just like, I'm writing my notes as I'm researching you, going literally like, what the fuck? This is crazy. So we're going to talk about that. But I think an interesting touch point is that your parents were also, health, I call them health nuts back then because there weren't such thing as biohackers. My parents were also health nuts, giving me supplements when I was 5 years old. My mom was like, take your vitamin E, thank God. Very grateful for that. But your parents, were they in the supplement business and, pescatarian, eating organic, like early adopters of this life? Tell me a little bit about what your childhood was like in that regard.
Yeah, so my dad was actually like an importer of botanicals and ginseng and various different botanicals in the 70s. And then my mom and him had a natural health food store. They bought one out in Wimberley. So I was actually born at home in Wimberley.
Oh, wow.
And then a really big natural food store was created that now is like the most powerful one in the world. And it put a lot of other ones out of business. And my parents opened a natural food restaurant to kind of like be able to like
also in
keep going.
Wimberley?
Also in Wimberley.
Wimberley's like, 40 minutes from here or so?
Yeah, probably from here. It's like 40
Yeah.
minutes. It was a great, I mean, well,
Yeah.
I was only there when I was like born. But then my dad actually partnered to do a restaurant with that really big, huge natural food store in Austin. So we moved to Austin to do that. And then it didn't kind of work out as they had all planned. And they stayed super hardcore health nuts. So I was born at home. I never went to a doctor till I was like 7. I was
Wow.
given lots of supplements as a
You're
kid.
you're lucky.
Yeah.
Do you
Uh,
remember being a kid and getting handed a handful of supplements with your dinner every night and, like, having a hard time taking them all? I remember
no,
that, and I used to hide mine under the rug, and we lived with my grandmother when my
uh-huh.
parents got divorced, and my mom would walk out of the room, and I would, like, literally, sweep them under the rug, and then she'd come back in and think that I had taken them, and then when we moved out of there, we moved the rug, and there was just, like, this,
Tons of
sea of just
hidden
rotten,
vitamins.
hidden vitamins. Yeah, sorry, mom, I probably wasted a lot of money there, but
I didn't. I liked it.
really?
Yeah. It's funny though. Now I think about it. My son is super into it. Like every night he wants to take him. And my daughter's like more into it. But I think I just had this, like I believed him. I
Yeah.
believed my parents and I thought it was good for me. And they had me pretty sold on it, I
Did
think.
their physical health, exemplify the benefits? I mean,
They
were
were
they
pretty, I would say like when I like my early childhood, they were both pretty vibrantly healthy. I would say like in elementary school and more towards middle school, I would say like their commitment to their own health was not quite as dedicated. And I think more due to just like mental health and relationship struggles and that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
so they weren't quite as vibrant at that time. My dad also like had a really traumatic, he had a friend pass away. And I think when that happened, he wasn't quite as vibrant afterwards. I don't know. It's kind of hard to remember and piece it all
Yeah,
together, but
yeah, yeah.
early childhood, very vibrant, going to the gym, working out, swimming, going to Barton Springs a lot, lots of outdoor activities, lots of fitness, lots of super clean, healthy eating. Like,
Wow, you're
yeah.
fortunate.
Yeah, it was a great life. And I grew
Yeah.
up not really close to here. I grew up off bee caves and
Oh,
on like a
okay.
couple acres and really close to the creek. And I didn't go to school for a while. And
Wow, you
so,
scored.
yeah, so I just like stayed
Home
home.
birth, natural foods. Yeah, no
Walked
school.
Yeah,
That's
walked around barefoot, and we live near the creek, so I would just walk barefoot down to the creek, and it was a
wow.
cool, good life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very whole.
Yeah.
I think people always sing for like whole foods and whole, holistic life. It felt very integrated.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward a bit to your teen years. So your parents get divorced, right? You're
hmm
in your what, 14-ish or something?
Yeah, 14, my parents
Okay.
start getting divorced.
And you start to rebel from what seems like, was a close relationship with your parents. And just going to tell a version of your story
Great,
because
go for it.
I really study up on my guest because I don't want to fly blind. But the part of your story where you start to get in a bit of trouble, you're getting brush-ins with the police and things like that, you start experimenting with drugs. The part that I want to get to is the day or night
Mm,
when you essentially overdose on LSD and things go terribly south. Is
mhm.
that story to me is when I heard that, I was just like, how do you even come back from that? So lead us into that story as a word of warning too for people. I talk about plant medicines on the show, and I always, I think, give an air of caution and encourage discernment and responsibility. But that said, many of us have had these kind of experiences, but not to the degree that you have.
Yeah, I mean that was a good intro to what I think happened. I think things when I started to get into trouble in high school, I wouldn't say that it was suddenly something new happened, like me getting into trouble. I think that as a child, well, both my parents remained entrepreneurs. And I would say remained they're probably two of like the most bold, eccentric people I've ever met. So I just grew up in an environment with like various eccentric folks, very committed to very distinct ideas. And one had to like develop their own self within that context. Like we weren't uh, it was a very good family and I am very grateful for it, but I wasn't like super coddled or supported to kind of make my own identity. It was like you got to figure out your identity to be able to like make it in this family because we are all a lot of intense people. And so I think always throughout school I felt kind of at odds in that I was from this environment that was like pretty alt and hippie and very intense and eccentric. And I was growing up with kind of like normal kids in the suburbs. But I had like this really weird, old, funky, hand built house. Like literally, our rooms uh, the house was built room by room. So they built the first room on a dirt floor, and they built the next room next to it, and they built the rooms on top of it.
So the whole house was additions?
The whole house was
Right.
additions. So like talk about like a weird psychological metaphor for my childhood
Yeah.
maybe, but yeah, so I just grew up in that environment. So then when I was in school, I always had kind of an odd relationship with like authority and structure, and I wanted to be approved of. I wanted to do well. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to try to be the smartest and like be good. So I avoided getting in trouble, but I would always figure out little like weird hacks to kind of I don't know, either like critique the system or get through it or like make it my own. And I think by the time I got to high school, my parents did get divorced, started getting divorced at 14. And I'm beginning this phase of adolescence, which, as brain development really changes in 12 to 26. That may be my biggest caution is just people 12 to 26 and how they think about drug use because your brain is very distinctly different 12 to 26 than it is before that or it is after that. And it's going through a lot of changes. And I think that those changes encourage people to take a lot more risk. They encourage them to push even kind of farther away from their natural parental community
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's like biologically it's important. You need to like get out and do something
Yeah.
new and make your own. And I'm already preloaded with like eccentricity, more manic, entrepreneurial, and I'm kind of at that age where it's like, okay, make my own. And then my parental structure kind of like is dissipating.
Mhm.
So there's not
Mhm.
many like threads there.
Yeah.
Um, and in that context, yeah, I started doing drugs a lot more. I was getting kicked out of, I got kicked out of high school, got arrested a couple times. And then when I was 16, not my first time, I took LSD. I took way too much LSD with a friend. And
How much is too much in this
I
case?
don't know exactly because I took like a hit or two at
Yeah.
first, and then he was like, "Do you want some more?" And he had the dropper, and he just kind of dropped a bunch. So,
Oh, brutal.
yeah,
Do not try this at home,
you do
kids,
not try this at
as you're
home.
about to learn, especially.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with language I have now, I had like a psychotic break type
Yeah.
of experience where I it just felt like everything was melting. And the level of kind of existential angst, confusion about what was happening, I just felt like I was melting and dying. And I panicked and I was looking for help. And I was in a part of Austin that was not like really dangerous or criminal, but not probably as safe as where I'd grown up. And I was looking for help, and I accidentally provoked a fight with other people in this apartment complex, and they
Were
stabbed.
these like homies of
They were not homies.
Oh,
They were just
okay.
like other young people
They
living
were
in the
just
apartment
okay, got it,
complex.
got it.
Um, I mean, clearly like more hard than I was because they stabbed me twice in the back and in the patella tendon, severed my patella tendon, and then just beat me like really badly. So I woke up in a drainage. Well, I didn't wake up. The ambulances like found me in a drainage ditch like 2 stories down. So I still don't know exactly how I got there, but very severely beaten and stabbed. I was rushed to the hospital and I had to have emergency abdominal surgery. So I have a huge scar here. My spleen was barely nicked. And otherwise, they reattached my patella tendon. And I just was like really, I mean, as lucky as you could possibly get in that situation in terms of survival.
Was there any effort on behalf of law enforcement to find out who had, done
They were
this?
aware who did it because I had provoked it in this drug-induced state, and you're in Texas, like, they were not in any trouble. I was originally accused of being the troublemaker.
Oh my god. They're like,
Yeah.
"And we're charging you with possession."
Yeah.
Schedule 1 or whatever. Oh
So
god.
I didn't have charges like that, but, not to get into all the details of that,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I woke up a few days later in the hospital. I couldn't, like, move. Clearly, my parents were, like, terrified. I was 16 and a half. And, I think that really began that began adulthood.
Yeah.
It
What
was
a
like
talk
it was
about a
like yeah,
rite of
yeah, it
passage.
was like a hard shift to, like, I will make I'm responsible for my choices. Even if I feel like I got in this thing where it's, this thing just kind of unfolded in front of me and unraveled and I lost control of it, like, I made certain decisions to kind of to get to those next steps and those next stages, no matter how maybe immature I was, even if my brain was like not fully, it was in this weird developmental stage. I had hormones. For whatever reasons, I did make decisions, and then it kind of unraveled in this way. And I think I started to see that I had the opportunity to choose my life. I had the opportunity to create my life. And I had a lot of trauma and a lot of pain, a lot of physical trauma, just really intense psychological,
Oh, I mean,
kind of torment that was
dude,
going on and flashbacks. And
I can't imagine. I mean, you're in that kind of space, you're vulnerable on such a deeper level,
mm,
right? I mean, I just think about times in my youth, which unfortunately most of my drug use was between 12 and 26 exactly. Good thinking there. Anyway, is what it is.
well, I don't think it's uncommon that that's when it
Yeah,
happens
yeah.
because
I
it's,
mean, you're looking for,
yeah, you're,
you know,
everything's
a
changing.
solution. Yeah,
Yeah.
but just thinking back to times where I would take acid and not be thoughtful, obviously about it and have no plan and just end up around kind of dark energy, people, things would go wrong, you get stranded somewhere, there'd be a conflict of some kind. I mean, anything outside of like total love and safety when you're that vulnerable is traumatic
Mm,
based on my experience. Just things going wonky with how
hmm.
you're going to get home or whatever is like super free.
Awkward.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just super freaky,
Yeah.
right? Any kind of bad
Hmm.
energy or anger, conflict. I mean, so when I heard you tell that story on another podcast, I'm just like, I literally can't imagine because going through that in and of itself, something that, emotionally, physically, psychologically traumatic is one thing. But when you are in that state, and as you said, the whole world is melting and everything is so unreal anyway, it's unfathomable. And congratulations also on making it back from that, right? I mean,
Thanks.
I think that kind of experience could really send someone on a permanent trajectory to a bad place, irretrievable mental, state. It's just insane.
Yeah, I mean, I've had friends at that age that experimented with intense drugs, and they did never come back. They lost their mind,
Yeah,
and so I
yeah,
feel very I don't, lucky is the only way I know how to call it because
yeah,
I didn't plan out all my steps or figure
yeah.
out exactly how to get back. I just started, trying
So it sounds
trying
like
lots of
it
things.
sounds like that there was a process of transmutation from that experience that started to unfold thereafter, right? Where you're starting to take a look at your life as a young person and take responsibility for your decisions. And did that lead you into the path of meditation and exploring yoga and acupuncture and the things that we've talked about that I know
Yeah,
you've had experience with? I mean, was that in a sense turned into a positive experience for lack,
I think it did.
grossly
Yeah.
speaking? I mean, it's never positive. Everything's kind of neutral, right? Until you do something with it and create meaning around it. But it sounds like after getting to know you a little bit that you took the ball and ran with that as like, oh no, I'm not doing life this way. What was your kind of process there and turning it around?
Yeah, I've had friends joke about like wanting a near death experience. Not about my story, but about,
Yeah.
in general, if you kind of can get woken up to like, whoa, like get kind of, yeah, just woken up from the mundaneness of life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say there's a couple ways to look at it. One is as a child, kind of progressing along and having all these experiences and expanding my experience, you know, I certainly had some elements of things that were like uh, negative and challenging in childhood that maybe created some more experience kind of on the negative side of like an absolute value scale. But having that kind of experience just boom, just like expanded my perspective of what life was and what pain was and what being lost meant and what melting meant. Like the level of the struggle provided all this new perspective and context. And I think that has probably been that has changed the whole future of my life. I mean, the future of my life since then in terms of just trying to seek out and integrate more perspective, not being afraid of what's dark, not being afraid of what's painful. Naturally, I have fear of things, but like really trying to lean into them and understand them and integrate them and bring them into my life so that I can You just have the richest, fullest life possible. And at that time, I mean, I think the things I really got exposed to were therapy. I got exposed to talk therapy, which um, I think for that kind of trauma is helpful. It helps to take kind of uncontrollable or overstimulating sensations and imagery and sounds and put them into words that kind of creates a sense of like ownership and power and integration with it. So finding words to describe what you're feeling, what I was feeling, helped me to integrate it more into my being and into my thoughts.
It's funny what comes to mind is had you had a very thoughtful and intentional experience with LSD, not that many kids at 16 are doing that, but
Yeah,
let's say you did, you also wouldn't have benefited without a process of integration, maybe even in a similar way,
I think that that's a very good
right?
point. I think that's a very good point.
As I know from personal experience, there were many early, psychedelic trips like that, and some of them went kind of south. I mean, not that south. That's as far south as you can go, I think, and still live to tell the tale.
Hmm.
But even the positive ones where it was a good time, and it was just like move on, you forget about, oh, that was fun. I went to a Dead show or whatever, just
Hmm.
lost our shit. But there was never really any grist for the mill that could be, harvested and integrated because you're sort of disintegrating, right? You're becoming unwhole and disparate parts of yourself are kind of firing off and you're coming apart, right? A dissolution of the ego and your intellect and the way you see yourself in the world. And if there's not a period of kind of going, okay, what does that all mean and how do we put ourselves back together? You kind of stay frayed.
Totally. Or even if you're not frayed, but you maybe had this one kind of very illuminating experience, it doesn't become integrated into like how you interact with your friends, how you show up in your creative work, how you show up with like your family. And I think, I mean, that's what's most interesting to me. I think is like
Yeah.
how I end up being with people, how I end up being with people, and how I end up being with my creativity and my work. If I just have this like really cool, mind blowing thing, and then it doesn't actually impact the rest of my life, well, then it's that's almost like maybe like the heart of some addiction, right? Where you keep trying to go back to this mind blowing thing versus having experiences of any sort. They don't have to be drug induced that help change who you are and provide more perspective. And then you integrate them and you like become your life becomes more interesting and fulfilling and there's more potential to express itself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's everything. We just did a show up here in the gonna call the studio the loft.
I like the
As
loft.
long
That's
as
good.
it's
The
cool. I
loft is
mean,
good. Yeah.
it's a little hard on the wife having all this activity around here, but it is what it is for now. But we had a show with my friends Ta and Cole the other day who are, former facilitators and help train integration coaches
Mm,
and therapists and just different people that are kind of psychedelic informed, as they call it. It's not necessarily people who are doing the facilitating, but just people who help someone integrate not only psychedelic experiences, but just any profound moment in your life where you have the raw materials for change, right? It
hmm.
could be a vision quest or a divorce or whatever, right? It's like when there's a huge pattern interrupt in one's life, within that there's the gold, right?
Totally.
If you have help and know how to find it, and or if you've become astute in finding it yourself and being able to extract a lasting change, I think that's super important. I mean, it's not only important, it's non-negotiable. I mean, it's like,
Yeah. I mean, I think
what
it's,
else are you gonna do with a
yeah.
profound experience of any nature, right? It's like, "Oh, cool. That was interesting." Move on, go back to the way we were and just back into the same, patterns, that we had before that.
Yeah. It's just wastage, I guess, in that case. You're kind of
Yeah,
wasting the opportunity. So I think talk therapy helped a lot, but I
yeah,
think also acupuncture helped a lot on like a nervous system level. There's pretty serious like nervous system overload from
yeah.
LSD itself, and then combined with that type of physical violence. And then I got really into cold therapy and hot therapy. And, I'd say this is kind of the transition where I went from like being raised in a family where you don't even know, like, what your values are, but they're just kind of like tell you what they are and you just go along with it, to where suddenly I would say my health journey really became my health journey. Like I was seeking out the answers. I was researching things about nutrition. I was looking into what type of exercise made sense for me or why I might want to do yoga, participating in acupuncture. And it really became, yeah, like my journey. It wasn't I wasn't just my parents' kid anymore doing these things that I just believed just because that was the only thing I was taught.
Yeah.
And I would say, that's really that kicked off, I mean, the rest of my kind of personal development and health journey, but it was pretty intense for those first 5 years. And then I moved out. I think through that I was inspired to start taking care of myself. So I moved out on my 17th birthday. I became emancipated. So my last year and a half of high school, I lived on my own. I started supporting myself. I actually started coming out to this neighborhood to do painting work. I was like a house painter.
Oh, I wish I would have known you.
Yeah.
We painted this
Yeah.
house 3 times,
um,
unfortunately.
yeah. So it was, yeah, it was, I mean, in that way, it was a gift.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a
yeah,
gift that keeps giving. I keep, mining it for more meaning.
yeah.
And
It begs the question, after having such a traumatic experience involving psychedelics, after that, at any point, did you find any interest in exploring that realm again and from a different perspective, more intentionally? And if so, did you derive benefit from it? What's your, stance on it now as a dad who's running a company and in a totally different place in your life? I know your partner Ben Greenfield, was pretty vocal about his plant medicine and psychedelic use and things like that. And then recently did a really hard pivot and was like, no, it's dangerous. Don't do it. Or I'm not going to do it, or whatever his perspective was. And I respected that, that he publicly was like, hey, I think I was wrong about this. I don't want to promote this lifestyle anymore. And I thought, good, man, good for you. But what's your personal take on it, if you feel comfortable speaking to that?
yeah, I'm comfortable. I mean, first of all, I love Ben. He's like my brother. And I think I really understand his journey. I think I understand his journey and his perspective from it. And I really respect him for him continuing to try to do his best. I really believe Ben's always trying to do his best. And that's why I love him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, in terms of like my experience, I think, um, yeah, I don't think, you know, I don't really look at the world and think, oh, these things are good or bad. I do see things more in context, and I see things in terms of a lot of human beings walking their path and trying to like figure things out. And so I'm not really one to weigh in to say like don't do psychedelics or do psychedelics or do or don't do drugs. That's just like not how I show up in the world because I don't know. I don't know what is necessarily going to be right for each person at each stage of their life. For me, it did make sense to try psychedelics again after that. And I went through different trial periods of it. I think I was definitely very cautious and scared.
I bet. Oh
Yeah, I
my
was very
God.
cautious and scared. And I think from that experience I gained a what's the right word? A thoughtful caution. It's like respecting your elders or something kind
Yeah,
of thing.
I know
It's like,
exactly what you mean.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, I really have, not this invincible, I can kind of, figure everything out. I'm all powerful. It put me in my place, I would just say, in that
Yeah.
way. And
Mhm.
so I think, yeah, I mean, that happened when I was 16. I went through different experiences of trying it again after that, and trying it in more social situations with friends where it's kind of more of like a bonding type thing. I wouldn't say it was never like, I want to blow my mind kind of thing. It was more like some type of social bonding type thing. And I'd say over time, it developed more into something that was a much lower dose and really supportive of like a meditative process.
Mhm.
So being alone, meditating, maybe doing some type of body work, and even doing kind of somatic work that I feel like is tied to some of the trauma that I've experienced in my life. Like in my like I have like stress and stuff like in my psoas, like where I was stabbed. Well, I was stabbed and it ties all these muscles that come into my psoas and then go down through my leg. So like kind of doing self massage and mobility work, just silent meditation, and really more as like a yeah, like a support for that type of process is how it it became to make more sense for me if and when I would do it. I don't currently do it, and that's not because I think that it's bad or not right or anything. It's just I don't feel called to,
Yeah.
and I think
That's a really important, piece of self-awareness, you know? I think a lot of people just get caught up in the, excitement of it, and, you can have experiences that are so transformative that I mean, I've had to not had to, but it's come naturally to me, I think, to kinda pump the brakes and just recalibrate and integrate and things like that, but after a profound experience, when I'm kind of still unraveling it or even in it, because there can be so much magic that transpires and such a visceral experience of God that there's like a attachment to that, right? Like, I gotta be doing this all the time.
Mhm.
I should be connected in this way all the time. But I kind of think if we were meant to be that way, then we would just have DMT flowing through our veins all the time in a, in a quantifiable sense, and we would all just be living in medicine land. But we're not really here for that. But I think that's a really important piece is that inner knowing when it's time and when it's not, and knowing when it's a call and when it's just a novelty or a curiosity.
Mhm.
I mean, that's my own journey.
Yeah.
Like you, don't care what people do with their lives.
Yeah.
Don't hurt other people, and we're good. That's my criteria. But
And even as like a novelty or a curiosity, I don't have it. I think that's okay too.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
think it's just I get
yeah,
yeah, there's all kinds of reasons why people do things. And at this point in my life, I think I still participate in practices that provoke insight in ways that in some ways are even more insightful, in some ways even more uncomfortable than things like that. I've been participating in 3 times a week psychoanalysis for a while now. And psychoanalysis basically you sit on a couch, your eyes are closed, and you're just dreaming, like with just talking out your dreams. And I keep a dream journal and write down my dreams. I really try to provoke my dreams to come out and to like explore them. And then like my life kind of becomes my dream. Like my life, I say this thing, my life is my dream, is my life is my dream, is the kind of meld together my
mhm,
dream life and my like waking life. And it's pretty trippy.
yeah, yeah,
And it's stimulating. It brings up all kinds of, little when I'm open to that level of like subtlety and nuance in what I'm feeling, then I start to feel more things, with people and work situations and my family. I can be more aware of like really specific insecurities or fears. And so there's a little, I mean, it's trippy. So my life is still pretty trippy.
it makes sense, right? Because there's so many doorways into the subconscious. I mean,
Mhm.
just thinking about meditation today, I laid there under this thing. It's called the Lucia light. It's this hypnagogic light. Oh,
I
you've done
love
it?
that
Yeah,
light. Yeah. I
yeah.
did it at Paleo Effects a few years
Oh,
ago.
actually,
And I was
the
like,
the
man,
woman who was on the show, oh my god, how embarrassing if I forget her name. I totally know her. We're like friends. Anyway, it'll come to me. She lives in Boulder.
I wondered that because I
Yeah,
know there's like a Lucia Light, not a clinic, but someone who runs programming there. I was
yeah,
wondering, yeah.
yeah.
I should
Her
reach out
name's
to her.
her name's Allison.
Allison.
Yeah,
Okay.
spelled differently than my wife, Allison. Yeah, Allison Pellissier is her
Mm.
name. Yeah, I'm happy to introduce you. But yeah, last I was with her, she was based in Boulder. But anyway, this morning. I got up and did what I normally don't do, which is like not meditate. I did other self care things
Mhm.
and just got my day started. And then I realized when you were coming here to record, I was like, I feel a little scattered. Like I need to just go defrag the head. And so I laid under that light and with a new calm journey on. And I'm like in a totally new world 20
Mhm.
minutes later. And I think it's because I just allowed myself to go into the subconscious and just open my awareness to just change my perspective, to get kind of just less just out of this
Like latched on to
yeah,
this one
just
little thing. And
yeah,
I feel
just
like that's the main thing. That's
yeah,
oftentimes what people are looking for in psychedelics. They see that they're all latched on to the way something has to be or some pattern, and they want to like blow it open or break it open. And sometimes it's as
yeah,
simple as like, just
yeah,
meditate.
yeah,
or,
especially if the light makes you feel like you're on LSD.
yeah.
That helps.
I do like the Shakti mat.
Oh,
Like,
I
the
don't know that.
acupressure? It's like that's like
Oh,
a bed
okay,
of
yeah.
needles thing,
Yeah, yeah.
like laying on the bed of needles, and it really it, like, I mean, I like just normal meditation as well, but it
Yeah.
kind of like disrupts my whole because I have to really relax. I have to release.
Dude, over there, I have these foot bed of nails. I
Uh-huh.
wish I knew what they were called so I could give them a shout out. We'll put them in the show notes anyway. I just forget the name, but they're really beautiful. It's these copper nails, and you stand on it. It's wild, but kind of like that,
Yeah.
it's just meridians and just activating the energy and just kind of, getting into a different state.
Mhm.
But anyway, I want to talk about forming your company, and I really want to talk about amino acids. It's
Great.
a very long way around getting because it's such an important thing, and we haven't covered it on the show. Like I don't think I've ever talked about essential amino acids, so we're going to do that. But there's one more story that I just have to get out of you because this was another one where I was like, oh my god, I just can't imagine. So you end up in India.
Mhm.
You're what, up in the Himalayas,
Yeah.
way high up,
Well, I'm like in
and
the foothills.
in the foothills.
I'm
Okay,
studying yoga in Rishikesh,
in
which is like this
Rishikesh.
little famous yogi town on
Yes,
the Ganges.
and you have another traumatic experience. Take us into that if you're willing. I'm
Yeah,
assuming you've meditated your way
I
through,
have.
a somatic reaction to it, but that was
Yeah.
another story. I'm just like, how do you come back from that?
Yeah. So I'm 21. And as part of this, kind of self improvement, spiritual path, health journey that I've been on, I ended up studying religion in college and health and dance and just like tons. I mean, I'm like maxing out at like 21 hours a semester. I'm just kind of obsessed with learning. And I've gotten really into yoga by this time. And so I went to India for 2 months. 1 month was to volunteer at an orphanage in the south, and another month was to do this kind of advanced yoga training in Rishikesh. And this is my first time. I've been to like Mexico alone by myself, I think like a year before, but 21, like pretty much, this is my first like Asian tour, and I'm alone staying in this ashram, and I meet a friend. I meet this guy, and he's a really nice guy. He's like, "You should come visit me in my village or whatever." And I'm just kind of taking up any opportunity, to do things, try things. So I get on this bus to go visit him in his village, which is about 45 minutes, no, maybe 2 hours from Rishikesh. And anyone who's been to India is kind of familiar, I assume, with the fact that people come into oncoming traffic. When you're driving, there aren't like really, there's lanes kind of, but you constantly are pulling into oncoming traffic and swerving back out.
It's madness.
It's madness.
Yeah.
Which I then later lived in India, and I actually drove the whole time.
Oh my
So
god.
that's the really impressive
Being
thing.
in a
After you hear this story, you're like, "Whoa, you chose to like live there and
Yeah.
drive there." But yeah, so I'm up in the foothills, and you're going all these switchbacks on the mountain, and my bus is on the mountain side, not on the outside side of the cliff. We're driving on the left side of the road up there, and it's just one of those moments where my bus and another bus come around a corner at the same time, and the back of my bus hits the back of their bus, and I still remember I like looked out and could see like I'd make eye contact, and then their bus just fell off the cliff, and it tumbled hundreds of meters, and we stopped and we got out, and I mean I think everyone just had this sense of powerlessness, not knowing what to do because it's like a cliff. What do you? Is there anything to do at all? And after a while, and I don't really know. I mean, I can't speak the language, so I don't really know. How to. I can't. I just don't
Yeah,
even know
let
what to
alone
do.
like which language are they speaking in
Yeah,
that particular
totally.
region? It's not
Totally.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I know Hindu. Well,
Yeah.
good luck.
Yeah.
What province are you in, right?
Yeah. And after a few minutes, a couple young guys are like, "Let's go down." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's go down." So spend basically the rest of that day, climbing down this cliff to try to rescue people. And 26 people died. The people were basically just like kind of strewn down the cliff. They'd been thrown from it. And I got down there, and they were just like kids my age. I mean, it was a mixed age, but there was this one guy who was like my age, maybe a little bit younger, who was unconscious, and I didn't really know that much about. I mean, I knew some about their religious beliefs, et cetera, but not like that much. So I just started like chanting a name of God that I assume was his God for being in that region to him, and then tried to build like basically like I'm forgetting what it's called, like a brace, a splint type thing out of the luggage to carry him up on. And we put him on that and just spent, I don't know, next couple of hours trying to get him up the cliff. And then when I was done with that, I went back down, and there was still one guy who was like trapped inside the bus. And so just ripped the bus apart until, until we could get the guy out. And I was just in shock, I mean, it was interesting. It was not the kind of thing where I felt panic or felt scared. I feel like I went into like worker mode, like how can I help? What can I do? And, after a day of that, I had to hitchhike back to the ashram and went back there and called my dad, told him what happened. And then I went back to my room and I didn't know anything about trauma, like biology at this point in time. But I laid down on my little hard bed thing and I had like a CD of like John Coltrane, Blue Train. And I put that on and I just shook violently. I was just like shaking violently. And I didn't know, like, am I making this up or what's going on? I didn't know, like, later on in my life, I learned like that is what animals do naturally and healthful in a healthy way to release trauma. And I just shook, for a long time. And I made my trip shorter. I came back to the US. I was supposed to go to Jordan for a year after that, but I came back to the US. And, and I think going back to the stabbing experience, having the experience of navigating pain and darkness and trauma somehow intuitively maybe even taught me that I should shake it out because I didn't really know that. Or I don't know, maybe I had less barriers up or I was more in touch with myself because I've been doing yoga 5 hours a day for a month. But, it's interesting. I feel like that I didn't observe at that point in my life that I needed to like really work on this. I kind of thought I'd kind of worked it out. But I actually think the next few years of my life, when I got back, I shifted from as much of like trying to be this like be this better person, whether that was through health or through service or through educating myself to wanting to be successful. And it's interesting. I took this like bent on around trying to be successful, and that kind of lasted with me for a few years. Um, and I think I ultimately worked through it. I mean, I still want to be successful and to be validated and people to like me and to win and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I got distracted for a few years. I think for kind of maybe 4 or 5 years, I was really trying to not work on myself. Somehow it became obvious. Somehow, like the success journey became this more important thing to me.
Mhm.
So that's my story.
Yeah. Wow, dude. How do you know how many people survived that crash?
5.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
So the vast majority of people
it was pretty
didn't make
gnarly.
it.
Yeah, and so because I was like the one white guy, and because I saved multiple people, like I was on the cover of the newspaper the next day,
Oh,
and like
man.
on the inside. So I still have like the newspaper of it, and it's pretty
Wow.
gnarly. I mean, the bus is uh, anyone who's seen a major wreck like that, it's like it just gets ripped apart and crumpled into like a little ball of metal by the end.
Oh my god. Yeah, I just watched the featured drama about the, kids in the cave in Thailand a
Mm,
couple nights
mm.
ago. I think it's called 13 Lives, recommended by a friend, and I didn't really know anything about that, but the level of heroic action that the rescuers took was so inspiring, and I'm kind of reflecting back on your experience, and I've never been in a situation like that where there, you know, people dying and I'm saving people, but I have had a couple experiences where something kicked in and there was just an innate ability to intervene and just help, right? It's a really interesting human phenomenon we have that sometimes you have resources that you don't know you had until that moment arrives and you're like, "Holy shit, I'm doing this?" That's an extreme example of that. So
It
you
feels good. It's amazing how. I think that's maybe the weirdest thing that feels weird about talking about it is it was scary. It was very gruesome. It was very sad, very sad. Like, I mean, just so heavy, right? And at the same time, I felt kind of alive. I was like part of something real. I was like really helping these people. It
talk
wasn't,
about presence too,
yeah,
right? Like you're not thinking about, "Oh, my job," or,
yeah. There's
like,
nothing else in that
yeah.
moment. It's just like,
"How much money
yeah,
do I have in the bank again?"
yeah.
Right? You're just like uber present. So you go into a period after that of, maybe, and you didn't say this, but I'll just suggest it. Maybe as part of your coping mechanism, it was just like focus on something else, and
I think that was.
you
Yeah.
know, you got into
Yeah.
the I'm going to make something out of my life and be
Mhm.
successful, and you know, a lot. It's funny because a lot of really successful people, I think, are that way because they're running from something, right? There's things they don't want to think about or feel, and so at least with that, there's generally a positive outcome, you know, versus like becoming an alcoholic or something,
Right.
right? Where you know, you go through something and you're running, but the means by which you're running happen to actually have deleterious effects on your life. But you can also be running and building something too,
Yeah.
you know.
I
But
think so long as you're building or creating something that
yeah,
has some some amount of positive
yeah.
effects to it, then
Well,
yeah.
what a beautiful segue,
Mhm.
Angelo, because you now have built something. You've probably built things before. We're going to skip to the chase. Um, so I found your company Kion,
Mhm.
I guess through just our mutual friend and your business partner Ben Greenfield talking about, oh, I'm you know I'm started a supplement company, and he started talking about it, and I got some of the products, and I was like, cool. All the ingredients check out. It's clean. It's legit, as I would assume from Ben, because he's you know pretty knowledgeable and discerning. And now you're doing the thing. So I guess the first question is, how did you end up hooking up with Ben? You have someone that's you know got a vast body of knowledge, a big audience. Didn't at that time, to my knowledge, like have a flagship brand or product that was his own to promote. And I find that fascinating because I've been doing what I'm doing for 6.5 years now, and I don't really have a thing. You know, I just find cool things like that people like you are doing. I go, hey, this is cool. I found this. Buy this thing if you want. You know, I like it, and that's kind of my thing. But what was it like to meet him? How'd you meet him? How'd you guys actually say, hey, let's create something that hasn't existed?
So I think it really is kind of like the story of like initially two individuals, right? That are in kind of two separate paths. So I think relating to you and to like Ben's path, I think he started back in like 2008, I want to say, doing podcasting. He's like
Yeah.
OG podcaster. And you know, I think his journey basically was, yeah, he was interviewing, you know, a lot of other people and telling the stories of other people's brands, and he wanted to be more part of something. You know, he wanted to be more part of a brand that he could it could be his, you know, which I think is a very normal desire and development of someone who's on that journey. And I think my path was more, I mean, it's interesting going back to like my parents. I joke about it because people often ask me like, "Well, how did you start this or why?" You know, it's like amino acids were like the first. I mean, it's one of the most important supplements I remember my mom giving to me, and her telling me like, "Angie, can't you feel it? Like it's so amazing." And so from like the earliest age, there were like if I was gonna if my life is my dream, and I was gonna dream up what would be like the perfect company that would like make 3-year-old Angie's mom happy, it would be like an amino acid company.
Right.
So,
Do your parents like your aminos?
yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
That's
But
good.
it's like, am you know, I don't know how conscious am I, or am I just kind of you know playing out the dream of my life to some degree, or what the intergenerational part of my life is. Uh, But yeah, so I mean, this supplements and the supplements that we make and coffee and kind of the ethos of what we do was something that I was raised in that was highly important to me, that remained really important to me, that then became this more highly emphasized part of my life after 16. I did pursue a lot of different things in career. I did a lot of different things in health. Um, and around the end of 2016, I got introduced to Ben through a mutual friend advisor kind of group who were like, oh, you guys should meet. Ben kind of wants to do this thing, and maybe you guys are like, you guys are a good fit. And we met, and we were just very compatible. I think that's it's kind of the simplest story of like
How
our
how
dynamic.
many years have you guys been working together now?
We met the very end of 2016.
Okay, so quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good because, as I'm sure you know, partnerships often seem like a great idea in their inception, and they are pretty prone to going south. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a lot of partnerships don't work out. My dad, who's a you know, I guess for lack of a better term, self-made man, entrepreneur kind of guy, and my whole life, anytime I was like, "Hey, I met this person, we're gonna do this thing," he's like, "Never get partners." He's fully anti-partner. Do your thing or don't do it, you know? And I've had partners and it's worked out for a period and sometimes it hasn't, you know, but that's a pretty good track record for you guys. What have been what is it, you know, what does it involve in terms of okay, so we're going to make our first product. It's aminos or, whatever
Mhm.
it was. uh, you find a formulator, like what's the first step in actually like having an idea like, hey, there's this category that we're really into. It's benefited us. We're not satisfied with what's out there. We think we could do it better. You find someone to manufacture it. Like what goes into the initial stages of like actually bringing something to market?
So I think this journey can be really different for different people. It's not like there's one way to do it. I think another reason why I think we were compatible in that situation was that Ben hat initially had a platform to start with. And so we were in a position, it wasn't the platform it is now. I think it was like 30 or 40,000 Facebook followers or something like that. And I partnered in that as well. So it was like, we're going to build up the bin audience in that brand, and we're going to build
Oh,
this new
cool.
Kion company. And so I think we were just really aligned on working together in that way. And, I think one big part of it is like sales are really important. You can have a really awesome idea for a product. You can go through all the manufacturing, you can do through all the operational things, but like you gotta like sell the product. You have to have people who want to buy it. And I'm not endorsing this guy as you know, like the ideal of a businessman, but you look at someone even like Nike and Phil Knight, who built Nike. He started by selling shoes out of, these Japanese shoes out of his trunk of his car, at, like track meets. And that's how he started to get the cash. Just then buy the next set of shoes, then buy the next set of shoes, and buy the next set of shoes. So I think the number one most important thing from pure business. So I'm not talking about like uh, when you really get to what the heart of business is. It's like, who are you going to sell it to, and how are you going to sell it to them? Can you create enough value in their life and trust that they're going to buy it from you, and they're going to want to come and buy it from you again? So I think that is the most important thing that you have to start with. Because if you don't have that, then you can have the coolest idea ever. You can get everything made, and you're just going to be sitting at home with all your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think you start there. You start with like, who's the person? How am I helping this person? Why are they going to want to buy it? How am I going to get it in front of them so that they even would want to buy it? Um, and then I think the next step is, okay, well, then you really have to make a good product, right? You have to make a product that you're not just that you're gonna sell to them once and they're never gonna want something from you again. Like that's not building a business. That's like a con game of some kind, right? So you have to make sure you build a really good product. And to do that, in the supplement space, it is about ultimately having a good idea for what the science is behind it, or what the formulation is. That's maybe a better way of saying it, because it doesn't have to be evidence based. You could have some type of really cool botanical that doesn't really have great studies behind it, but you've used it, you really like it, you believe it's going to work for people. Um, so having a really clear idea of like what it is that's going to work, that is going to work. And then, yeah, you basically work with contract manufacturers. So in the supplement space, very, very few brands, except for like some of the absolute largest, but even the largest, work with manufacturing groups that will actually make it for you. So you have to set standards for them, say, this is what I want in it, this is where I want the ingredients from, this is what the specs have to hit. You basically describe in great detail exactly what you want. If you're trying to make a really awesome product,
Yeah.
there are plenty of people that just go and be like, hey, I just need this thing to sell to this person. Can you
Oh,
make it from like that?
I'm well aware.
Yeah.
I go to health food stores sometimes. I'm like, oh, vitamin C, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And first thing I do with anything is I'm like ingredients, right? And I'm looking for excipients, swag shit.
Yeah.
I mean, the garbage that they put in so many health supplements is astonishing, and it makes me feel bad. I mean, not only for the fact that you're probably not going to derive much benefit from it and you're going to be wasting your money, but there's often things in supplements that are actually really bad for you too,
Yeah.
so it's like the quality control piece is always is tricky for me. And when somebody comes out with something and not that I'm the expert, but I know a bit about what's good to put in your body and what's not. And sometimes I read this stuff and I'm just like, fail, you guys blew it. And it's
Well,
been
and I think it's because lots of times people don't know. They have some cool, like
right.
they want to be in the health business. They want to like, there's a struggle where people are trying to make a living for themselves. They're trying to figure out what their next step is. They're trying to like expand. And I think it happens honestly too. And I'm not saying this is your situation, but
Yeah.
people in your kind of seat where you have an audience. Well, I do have people that trust me because I'm checking out lots of products. I could offer something to them. And then if they don't know really how to make it, or some other person's like, hey, I can help you make this thing or do it, they could just, you just don't
That's a good
know. You
point.
don't like
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
manufacturing a food product or supplement product is a complicated business. It's a complex supply chain. There's all these different partners. There's lots of quality testing and specs. It's not the thing you just kind of like just do.
Yeah.
You gotta
Yeah.
like,
Well,
you gotta
that's
be really committed to it. And
that's one
if you,
reason
yeah,
why I haven't done it, you know?
yeah.
And plus it's just like I don't know, I feel like there's nothing really missing from the market, right? Sometimes something new and novel will come out, like a product with spermidine or
Mhm.
urolithin A, like things that have been kind of in the periphery of the molecular world, right? And there's some research behind them, but they're not readily available or readily known. Sometimes something like that comes out, and I'm like, damn, I wish I would have discovered this because I could have grabbed onto it because I believe
Mhm.
in its effects, right? I take something like, oh, this is awesome. But for me, it's like, what am I gonna do? Make another protein powder? You know, it's like there's already a good one. You could sitting right here,
Well, I think that's the
you
case
know?
unless you're really passionate about that. I think that's the thing, and I
Right.
think that's, I am passionate about that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm passionate about making really awesome products
Yeah.
and, like, and doing that really well. If I was more passionate about being a podcast host, I would bust my butt to try to figure out how to do that, and
Yeah.
and at one
Totally.
point I thought like, "Oh, maybe I'll try to do a podcast. Everyone else is doing a podcast," you know?
Yeah. Who
And
doesn't have a podcast
yeah.
at this point?
And I don't
Yeah.
deliberately because I'm like, I want to be great at this thing,
Yeah.
and I want to be really good at that. And you know
Yeah.
what? There were a lot of other proteins and there were a lot of other aminos and there were other coffees. Like, our top products are not the most novel, but we work really hard to make them awesome,
Well,
to do it really
there's
well.
something you talked about earlier in that, and not to minimize people to, a lifetime value customer, right? But that's what they call it in the business.
Mhm.
But you got to make things that work, right? Where people actually see benefit, or they're going to be like the example you gave, where they're like, "Oh, cool packaging. I heard this thing's awesome," and they buy it, and you never hear from them again, right? So it has to work. To me, as a consumer, of someone who buys all kinds of crap like this, not to diminish, call it crap. It's a bad way to state it, but my cabinets are just full of stuff. I did a video the other day about my top 10 supplements, and it's like we couldn't even fit them on the freaking kitchen island. There's stuff still in the pantry.
Mhm.
So I'm that guy. But what gets me as the consumer is like when I'm out of something and I'm like, oh man, I'm out. Like your sleep formula. I hit you guys up a couple weeks ago. I'm like, dude, I'm running low. I'm not even to the bottom of the bottle yet. And I'm like, I take this stuff every night because it works. I get my aura ring in the morning and I'm like, oh shit, I got more REM sleep last night, which is hard for me, harder
Mhm.
for deep sleep, incidentally. So, I'm that customer that's like, no, I actually need this in my day-to-day protocol. So I have really kind of no choice unless I couldn't afford it or something, obviously. But I have to order it because now it's become part of my regimen and I know when it's not there. And it's not novel necessarily. It's just like it does the thing I want it to do.
And it's so like in that case for making that product,
That was a hint to send me some more of your sleep
yeah.
formula. By the way, if you guys didn't
Yeah.
catch that, he's the CEO. He has the power to make a call. Give me a crate of that shit. But right, I mean,
Yeah.
you got to be seeing results to the point where you're like, oh, actually, not that you need anything, right? I mean, you need air and water and calories, but I mean, to optimize your
To
life,
help and to like
yeah,
make your life better if you
yeah,
have that, the means to do that. Yeah.
yeah,
And so it's like in making that sleep product, it was very straightforward. It was, okay, we want to sleep better. What will work to help us sleep better? And we just, we use third-party research groups to make sure that we'll use a couple and they'll do a meta-analysis of all the research out there about every single ingredient. And then we have another one critique it. And then I just get in there and just read it all and ask lots of questions and argue and think through all the things. And what it came down to was there were three ingredients that had by far the most clinically researched proof over the longest period of time, that were all very safe, that were just very aligned with like the ethos of what our product suite already was. And so none of them are the sexiest ingredients. They're tryptophan, which is like the most cliche common. It's like the turkey joke, right? You eat too much turkey, then
yeah,
you feel tired. Well, there's a reason why. At a gram of tryptophan, it's just been highly, highly studied, and it's very, very safe to support falling asleep, staying asleep, and getting more restful sleep. And then a form of pharma GABA, a form of GABA called pharma GABA, which is actually the only GABA that has all the research behind it, and then L-theanine, which also has the most amount of research. So rather than trying to, and all of these two are ingredients that don't, they're not like a, they're not like they're not like a drug, I guess I would say. I mean, no supplements are drugs, but they don't kind of like trick you into anything. It's basically supplying yourself with these core 3 amino acids
Right.
that will support your body in naturally producing neurotransmitters that help you to fall asleep and stay asleep and sleep better.
Right.
So it was
Yeah.
like,
Although I gotta
yeah,
say, and I
uh-huh.
agree with that because I have a little bit of understanding. Tryptophan is eventually going to cascade down into melatonin, right?
It's
Is
so
that
it
how it
actually
works?
it's actually tryptophan to 5-HTP to serotonin to melatonin,
Okay.
but it's really the serotonin.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not. I mean,
Okay. Oh,
it is
interesting.
potentially the melatonin, but it's actually the serotonin that I think has the greatest
Oh,
impact.
cool.
Yeah,
Cool. There you go.
yeah,
Schooled me.
hmm
What I've noticed though is if I take 3 of those sleep capsules, I get sleepy.
yeah,
But here's the thing. I don't wake up groggy. That's the key because there's a lot of stuff I could take in my
yeah.
supplement cabinet that will knock me out, but I'll wake up feeling like goofy. "Hi, Cookie.
Hey,
Come to see us?" You know what I mean? Like, I
yeah,
used to make this, some of my friends, if they ever hear this back in LA, will remember this, but I used to make this nighttime sleep drink called I just named it the Knockout Punch.
uh-huh.
There's my product. God damn it, I just realized
Knockout
it.
punch. There you go.
But dude, I would put like a tablespoon of tryptophan,
Uh-huh,
I'd put GABA, magnesium, lemon balm, anything I
uh-huh.
could find online, any herb, any supplement that made you tired and sleepy, I would put it in like way, way too much. And to the point I actually gave it to a girlfriend that I was dating at the time, and she took it the first night and had to pull over on her way home because she felt too
So
not
sleepy.
safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she might have been the one that named it the knockout punch, I forget, but, and it worked beautifully. I mean, you were just toast for 9 hours, but then the next morning, you feel like you lost some IQ points and just
hmm
can't function, so that's the tricky thing I think with supplementing things for sleep is can you metabolize it in time to actually wake up feeling refreshed and not feeling like you just took sleep medication at 7 in the morning. So, well done.
Thank you. And again,
Um,
we just we weren't trying to be the most. We weren't trying to be like the cool, hot, like most special, cutting edge thing. It was like what actually will work.
right,
What will work
right.
and what's safe and what's been studied and what do I want to take every day and I will give to my family every day.
Yeah.
And if it's some really cool new thing, great. If it's tryptophan, if it's basically your knockout punch from 20
Yeah.
years ago.
I had like the bulk GABA though, not the pharma GABA you guys
Okay.
use. It had that niacin flush kind of effect,
Uh-huh.
where you're like, "Whoa, I'm dizzy and turning red." Way too much GABA. Um, yeah, I think now my formula is I'll take the Kion Sleep and then some CBD,
Uh-huh.
some Ned CBD or this other brand Element. Those are the two that I like currently. Onda is another great brand. Give them a shout out. So there's a couple good CBD brands. Most of it I've tried doesn't have any noticeable effect. And then magnesium, and that's good. Like, and then if I'm really smoked, I'll take some like even a melatonin suppository
Uh-huh.
or like a high dose oral melatonin if I need to reset my circadian rhythm or just break out
I
the
would say
big
that's the
guns.
time to use melatonin. Like I
Yeah,
wouldn't recommend using it unless you're trying to reset your circadian clock.
that's what I figured
And
out.
especially don't take it like late at night because that's
Yeah.
what it does. Then it'll make you think that you should get tired late at night.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's the worst.
Yeah.
I learned that with the suppositories, the mitozen suppositories. I think they're like 450 milligrams. They're like insane amount of melatonin. And when I first got them, I'd be like, "Oh, it's 10 o'clock. I'm getting ready for bed," and I would take it, and then I'd be really tired the next morning. So I
Yeah.
figured out if I wanted to do a hard reset like that, or just I need to guarantee no matter what a good night's sleep because there's a big day, I'll do it like right at dusk.
hmm
And then I start to get super sleepy at 9, and then by the time I metabolize it the next morning, I'm fine.
I think it's also good for intercontinental travel. Whenever you're
Yeah,
crossing many, many time zones and you really
big
need to
time,
reset, then it
big
makes
time.
sense.
Yeah,
Because it's
yeah.
not just sleep. When you reset your circadian clock, it's like all of your daily functions get kind of reset.
Oh,
So yeah, I just be cautious with it.
yeah.
Like reuse it when you really need it.
I agree. I
Yeah.
learned that. But I'm the guy. I'm the guinea pig, right? I
Yeah.
try shit, and then I tell the people to listen to the podcast, like, "Oh, don't do it the way I did it." My method of supplementation, which I don't recommend, but I'm here to take one for the team, is like when you get something, take 4 times the recommended dose,
Uh-huh.
right, to get the effect, and then scale it back to what works.
Uh-huh.
But I think the
Why do
smart
you do the 4x to
because
start?
I'm just an idiot.
Uh-huh.
But I think the smart way to do it is you actually scale up until you
Uh-huh.
hit your sweet spot. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really, the most logical way to do it. But I think it's partially just my personality. I'm just extreme and
Mhm.
weird. But also, I just, people send me all kinds of stuff, and I got to like get to an understanding of it and figure out if it works or not. And to
Mhm.
do that, like I just go maximum and like, oh shit, okay, it does stuff. Maybe it gave me, the runs and that wasn't the desired effect or whatever side effect from doing it wrong. But then I know, like, okay, word to the wise, there's a reason why it has recommended dosages.
And
Uh,
12 capsules of Kion sleep, you're gonna feel pretty sleepy
okay,
if
good
that's
to
what you're
know.
doing. If you're taking
Yeah,
4x.
I've taken quite a few.
Okay.
And I think I'm 3 or 4 a
Okay,
night right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
I'm rationing because I'm
Mhm.
low, as I said at the
Okay, we'll
moment.
get you more.
Thank you.
We'll get you more.
And I'm kidding, but not really. But I want to talk about aminos.
Great,
When I
let's
was
do it.
thinking about this episode, I'm going through I had all these questions about amino acids because I've never covered it. And here we are, 1 hour and 5 minutes into it. But I love your backstory too. And there's just so much, juice in there that I wanted to share with people. But I've never done a show on aminos. And as I've, added them to my regimen, the Kion aminos, of course, which are great, by the way. Now it's kind of like, oh my God, why wasn't I taking this the entire time? Because I've had them here and there and just,
Mhm.
whatever. I didn't pay that much attention. But now that I'm starting to feel the effects and I'm starting to do more research and learn about them, it's like, oh, this needs to be, at least for me, I mean, everyone can do whatever, but this is part of the foundational, daily 10 things kind of, right? Where it's got to be there. So your mom's giving you, these essential amino acids when you're a kid, 20 plus years later, you make this company. What are the essential amino acids? What do they do for you? Why do I feel awesome on them?
So, I'll start by just describing what protein is
Okay.
and put it in the context of the other macronutrients. So, there's a whole category of nutrients we call micronutrients. When we're thinking about like vitamins, et cetera. When we talk about the macronutrients, there are carbohydrates, fat, and proteins. And in our body, we're like, 55 to 60% water. And the rest of our body, that is solid mass, over half of it is made up of proteins. So I'm kind of blending two ideas. One is like the proteins that you eat, and the other one is like literally your body is made up of
The
proteins.
protein that you are.
The protein that you are, yes.
Yeah.
But the reason why I make that comparison is because when you consume carbohydrates, you consume fat, their primary purpose is for you to convert them into ATP energy. So an energy source that allows your body to actually like move, your brain to think, everything to function. The primary purpose of protein and the amino acids that make them up are to help you rebuild the proteins in your body. The way that the proteins in your body work is that they are constantly in a state of breaking down and then resynthesizing. But when they break down, they lose some of their constituent parts. And proteins fundamentally are amino acids. Proteins are just a string or a chain of amino acids tied together. And there's 20 of them that are typically in most of the proteins in your body and that are in like muscle, for example. So your body, well, you can eat, carbohydrates or fat, and that's going to help you like have energy to produce ATP to actually do things. Anything else in your body that's a protein cannot get its needs met from just carbs and from fat. It has to come from amino acids, either in the form of a whole food protein or in the form of an amino acid supplement. So, like, what kind of things in your body are protein? Well, obviously your muscles, but all of your organs. When we talk about enzymes, enzymes are proteins. When we talk about our neurotransmitters are basically amino acids. Like most of our body, most of the things that we talk about in our body are these things. They're basically proteins or individual amino acids. So you should definitely eat protein and amino acids because if you don't, you're going to have all kinds of issues with all these different functions in your body. Then the question becomes, well, like how much protein, which amino acids, why? Like how does it all kind of work? So this is where you get into the difference. Are we
No,
you
this is
following me still?
good.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, great.
You're
So
knocking out some of my other questions in one fell swoop. So that's
okay,
good.
great.
Yeah.
I love this stuff, and I love talking about it. So proteins that you eat are composed of these 20 amino acids, But there's one fundamental difference between these amino acids. Some are called essential and some are called non-essential. There's also like conditionally essential, meaning like sometimes they're essential, but we'll just keep it simple right now for essential and non-essential. The essential part means that your body cannot synthesize them. So you have to eat them in the form of some kind of food. On the other hand, the non-essential ones, if you eat the essential ones, it can actually create the non-essential ones in your liver. So you don't have to eat them. Now, that doesn't mean that you would in whole food sources, there's nothing where it's like only the essential amino acids. So it's not like you would typically just be only eating the essential and then force your body to create all the non-essential ones. But the essential ones you really need to eat. And there's 9 of them. Those are the 9 essential amino acids and the 11 non-essential amino acids. Oftentimes, the discussions and arguments around plant-based diets or animal protein-based diets is around something being a complete protein. And a complete protein means that it has all the 9 essential amino acids in sufficient amounts. Very few plant proteins have the 9 essential amino acids in sufficient amounts to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, to actually support the development of the new proteins in your body. Thus, you need to mix and match different plant proteins. Or there's like quinoa, soybeans, buckwheat. There are a few that are considered more complete and that on their own.
Brutal. My stomach hurts just thinking about those.
It's like,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of questions that come to mind, and many that I already have here, but something just occurred to me that wasn't in my notes.
Yeah.
So I'm, what am I? 51 right
Mhm.
now, right? And so your digestive enzymes, build the enzymes in your
Mhm.
body that you would use to process protein, and your HCl, all of this stuff starts to decline, over 40, let's just say roughly, from my understanding. So as you're talking about the aminos, at first I'm like, well, what if I just eat 4 steaks a day, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm good. Why would I ever just take exogenous amino acids on top
Mhm.
of that? And then it occurred to me that even if we're eating foods like, let's just say, a steak that has a lot of these essential amino acids, um, as we age, are we indeed less able to assimilate and the amino acids from those foods?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That is, I think one of the most important cases for someone choosing to supplement with essential amino acids as a dietary supplement and not just through whole foods.
Okay.
Basically, someone really starts at age 40, but at age 50, it only accelerates the risk of sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle mass. And that
This is
is
pretty
due.
much the only reason I work out, by the way.
Well, it's actually really
'Cause
interesting.
no matter how hard I work out, I
Oh.
never look that fit. So I'm like, I'm definitely not doing it for that because it doesn't do
Are you doing
anything.
like cardio or resistance training?
Resistance
Yeah.
training. I go
Okay.
to
Yeah.
ARX once a week, and I have
Cool.
my X3 bar here. And then
Awesome.
now that it was cooling off. Now it
Uh-huh.
got hot, as you can tell right now, because we're both sweating balls here. But I have the Carol bike in the garage
Uh-huh.
and the Live O2
Yeah.
contrast
Mhm.
training thing. When it's not that hot, I get out there and I will do some pretty hardcore cardio.
Yeah.
It's like a hit training basically on a bike.
Which is great for heart health.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not as important. It's not gonna help with muscle really.
yeah. But it's like,
Yeah.
I literally just don't want to be falling down when I get old and breaking bones in the shower and shit.
Yeah.
Like, so
I
yeah,
would say muscle, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I
yeah,
would
yeah.
say muscle is the most important asset that you want to take into old age. The most
Word.
important physical asset. And that's because it helps modulate metabolic health, um, your cardiovascular health, and the most obvious one, and it seems cliche, but it's so true, is that when you get older, your ability to stay active is one of the most important, like, leading indicators of how well you will continue to do. And if you can't move around, you can't be active, you can't do things, your health just starts to decline even more. And then if you get
Right.
injured, which is much more likely if you have less muscle, then your body goes through this whole stress response. You lose even more of your muscle, you become even weaker. So, really, the idea of kind of going into your older age already with lean muscle is one of the most important leading indicators of ultimate longevity in terms of health span, in terms of
Yeah,
like
yeah,
being able to do stuff when you're old, not just like
yeah.
be
Well,
this like meditating, monk who's
well,
been who's
that's
unlimited
that's
autophagy.
that's amazing because I'm not really hung up on how long I live. Like people might think from the lifestyle that I live, which
Yeah,
is to some people pretty extreme. To me, it's extreme to not do the stuff I do, but
yeah,
that's just me. But it's not like, Dave Asprey's like, "Oh, I want to live to 180." Like, I don't, not that concerned with how long I'm here, but I want to be able to do
Yeah,
stuff
like live
as
well.
long as I'm
Yeah.
here. I don't want to be the little old man crossing the crosswalk with the hunchback and can't move. Like, no, if I'm, gifted and likewise encumbered by the physical body, like I want it to work as well as possible for as long as I'm meant to be here. And
Yeah.
when my expiration date's up, then bye, I'll move on. But man, there's so much suffering in aging. I just observe older people, and there are very few of them that look vital and like they're having a good time in their body.
And when you look at it, when you look at them, you're like, oh, they look like they're having a good time. It's because they're active.
Right.
Like
Right.
they're walking, or wow, this guy's like running, or he's, picking up his grandchild or something.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're physically vibrant. And that is that they have energy and they have muscular strength.
Hmm.
And they also likely have some type of cardiovascular health, right? They're not
Yeah.
like scared of going upstairs.
In preparation for this interview today, something occurred to me. I was outside with Marius, the guy who helps me keep the house in order here, and we were moving this patio furniture, so I could move the ice bath over. And as I was lifting it up, I looked at this ledge, and I was like, should I step up on the ledge with this thing in my hand? Probably not. And I thought, no, I think I can do it. And I did kind of a sketchy move where I could have gotten really hurt.
Uh-huh.
And it occurred to me, because I've been, at least putting some effort in 2, 3 days a week to working out, I was able to do something that looked sketch, and then I did it and I felt my glute like kick in. I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh, good job, glute. We did that shit, and I went over the ledge with the thing, and I was safe and everything was fine. And it occurred to me, that's the kind of shit when you get older. I mean, I'm not, elderly, but I'm 51. Like, those are the kind of things I want to be able to do. Like, I don't want, oh, hang
Not
on
be
a minute.
afraid. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like,
it's not really more than like 2 to 3 times a week of some resistance training that works for you, some type of like walking, light cardio that works,
yeah,
and amino acid nutrition. It doesn't
yes.
have to be essential amino acids, but it really, let's circle back because
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
this is where it becomes really interesting. And
Yeah.
I think the aging point is such a good point in this. So going back to this plant protein versus animal protein, one point is like literally in the food itself, how many essential amino acids are in it. Then another issue related to that is how digestible is the protein itself. So you could have something that has a more complete protein in it, but it's harder for your body to digest and extract those amino acids. And that creates another issue about why that protein may not be equal to another protein. So ideally, you're looking for a protein source where you can literally break it down into its constituent amino acids, and that the profile of those amino acids are ideal for your body to be able to use. So in the kind of spectrum of whole food, animal proteins, and those include though things like dairy, and they include things like eggs, are superior. They sim-
Eggs have the amino acids too?
yes, eggs
Oh,
eggs eggs are
cool.
eggs are like at the top
Oh,
of the
word.
protein scale, the amino acid
That's
scale.
sweet.
Yeah,
I have 2 raw eggs in my smoothie every morning.
yeah, eggs are an excellent source of essential amino
Egg
acids.
yolks, I wanna
Egg-
clarify. I don't like the whites.
Oh, really? Well, the whites are what have the protein
Ah,
and the
come
amino acids. You got to
on.
put the whites
Shit,
in.
dude.
Yeah, the yolks are
They
the
just
fat, more the
skeeve me
fat.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whites skeeve me out. Anyway, I
Oh
digress.
man.
So
So yeah. So in that's why animal proteins tend to be easier to eat to get in your daily essential amino acids needs. That doesn't mean you can't do it with plants. You just have to eat a lot more, and thus, when you're eating a lot more, you're eating more calories, et cetera, and it's harder for your body to digest them. But you could support that with, supplementary digestive enzymes. There's ways to get more out of
yeah.
plants, and that we talked about a little bit before. Not to go too down the vegan path, but that is one reason why they'll add lots of digestive enzymes to plant-based protein powders, is because if you don't, you get pretty bad like stomach cramps, and it can hurt.
Bro,
Yeah,
I cannot do vegan protein, like plant-based proteins. Invariably, it just wrecks my gut. It's just I just know, and I've tried to psych myself
yeah,
out, and, like, maybe it's in your mind because you think that it does, and
yeah.
you then speak it into reality, that kinda thing, and I'm like, "No, it's just a fact." Like,
And it's not everyone. Some people can.
yeah, no, I
Yeah,
mean,
so it's like I too am one of those people.
there's
It's not
smoothie
my
stands
thing.
all over the place,
Yeah.
and I look at the ingredients, rice protein, I'm like, God, get some of this freaking whey protein.
Yeah.
Come on, you guys." But yeah, but I also am just, that's my Achilles heel is always been my digestion. Well, I've had many Achilles heels, but that's one of the remaining ones I have to really fine tune. But yeah, I guess some people could do that.
Some people can. I mean, I won't digress too much into that. I'm not a
Sure,
huge plant
yeah,
protein fan.
yeah,
But kind of coming back then to the essential amino acid question, because
yeah.
I just compared plant proteins versus animal proteins and why animal proteins are potentially, a better source of these amino acids. They're easier to get the amino acids that you need.
Yeah.
Um, but one other really interesting point that is very well documented through research is that the essential amino acids not only are the amino acids that your body cannot synthesize, and thus you must eat them, they're also the amino acids that stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So, as I said earlier, your body, all the proteins in your body are constantly in a state of being broken down and then rebuilding. If you want to maintain your muscle, and especially if you want to build more muscle, and this doesn't mean like getting all bulky and ripped, it just means like having solid muscle mass in your
And being
arms,
able to
right?
lift the
And your legs.
patio
Yeah,
furniture
lift the
over the
patio
ledge.
furniture. Yeah, exactly. You want to be in a situation in which you're stimulating more muscle protein synthesis than muscle protein breakdown is occurring in your body. And what's been proven is that the essential amino acids themselves are the component parts, the active component of protein that stimulates the muscle protein synthesis. So while in a whole food category or selection, eating some type of lean meat is basically going to have the greatest or eggs is going to have the greatest impact on new muscle protein synthesis for the least amount of calories and kind of probably the healthiest decision for many people. If you take essential amino acids as a younger adult, under 50, no offense, but under 50 younger adult, it
Come on.
has gram for gram. No, man, you're a young dude. It has 3 times the muscle protein synthesis as whole food protein. So 1 scoop of Kion aminos, and it's not the only brand that does this, but I can go more into the formula behind why it is so important for this as well. 1 scoop, which has 5 grams, or if you take the capsules, 7 capsules has 5 grams, is equivalent to 15 grams of whole food protein, 15 grams of something like a whey protein isolate in
Wow.
terms of muscle protein synthesis,
Okay.
rebuilding
Okay.
new proteins.
So if I'm eating
But
15
but that's
gra
if you're younger. As you get older,
Ah,
not only is it more difficult for your body to break down whole food protein steak,
yeah.
your body also is less sensitive to the stimulation of the muscle protein synthesis. So it's not just the digestion, it's also like the way that your body responds to mTOR and being able to stimulate this new muscle growth. It becomes basically less sensitive. So it actually gets the impact of essential amino acids become greater on a multiplication scale than whole food protein as you age. It's not because the essential amino acids are becoming more powerful as you age, but as you age, protein works less and less and less well for you. So as you get older and older,
Right.
it gets up to 4 times, 5 times the impact of a whole food protein. So as you age, taking essential amino acids as a dietary supplement are a great way to help hit your daily needs to maintain muscle, build new muscle in a much more efficient, effective way than a whole food protein.
That's crazy, though, the 15-to-1 ratio. I'm thinking about eating 15 grams of steak, right? And I'm going to get,
Or versus 5 grams
yeah,
of
of aminos,
aminos. Yeah.
right? But get less benefit.
Yeah.
Real ultimately, I mean,
Yeah.
someone of my age at least.
Yeah. And so one other nuanced point I'd make here though is that someone would say, "Yeah, but you don't have the not like here's another reason why too. So steak, only half of it is essential amino acids, 45%, and 55% is non-essential amino acids, which are still good, and steak has minerals and has fat and has other good things in it. So I'm not encouraging people to like stop eating real food,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But what we know is that our bodies do not need that amount of non-essential amino acids. So when we eat the steak, there's a large portion of the non-essential amino acids that we don't even use that instead get converted into glucose and into urea. They just simply don't we can't use them all. So if you eat whole foods and you supplement some with an essential amino acid supplement like this, what you can do is you kind of optimize the amount of the non-essential amino acids that you're getting from your whole food diet and not trying to eat that much more protein, which you can't actually like fully
Right.
use all the non-essential amino
That
acids in it.
urea piece is interesting because a few months ago, and I hope to God he got over this phase, but my dad, I talked to him, he goes, "Well, I went to the doctor. I'm having too much uric acid," because he's just not carnivore, but I mean,
Uh-huh.
meat and potatoes
Yeah.
guy. And so he's having kidney problems. So the doctor said, I got to go vegan. He's gonna eat a vegan diet now. Dad, if you're listening, that was so cute. I didn't correct him. I'm gonna correct him now on air. And
You got to tell him about EAAs.
yeah,
And
yeah. But he's he's crushing tons of steak because that's
uh-huh.
that's what feels good and tastes good or whatever. But that uric acid downstream when you're having to eat that much protein, especially at his age, which I think he just turned 79, right? To keep the muscle mass and to stay
Mhm.
strong, you're having to eat a lot of protein, but you're deriving less benefit from it and getting all that urea.
Exactly.
Ah,
And so this, we didn't formulate this product for this specific use case, but most of the research now coming out is actually around therapeutic uses of essential amino acids for elderly adults and specifically people with forms of kidney disease.
oh, no shit.
Because there used to be a myth that higher protein diets would create kidney disease. It's been completely disproven. I won't go through all the studies, but there's absolutely no sign of that. That said, if you have some form of kidney disease or early kidney issues, then consuming too much protein, what happens is, yeah, you simply can't use all the amino acids. And so your body has to process them out and it creates this extra uric acid.
Wow.
But if you consume the essential amino acids, it doesn't because you're not. Here's the simplest way of describing it. So with your dad, right? Like his muscle is being broken down all the time, and then it's rebuilding. So there's actually some in the final protein that makes up his muscle. It's not only the 9 essential; it's all 20. It includes the 11 non-essential, and that's why you don't necessarily need to be eating so much of a whole food protein in the non-essential because when it breaks down in the amino acid pool, there are those non-essential amino acids. And then when you introduce new essential amino acids, it reuses those to rebuild the muscle. And thus there's less of a load of creation of more ammonia and urea on your dad's kind of final byproduct.
Dude, I just got a marketing idea for you. You could have the same aminos product, but just like have a geriatric
Have a
version. You
geriatric
know what I
version.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
For your parents' aminos.
For your
But I'm gonna
parents.
send him some because
Yeah, it's yeah.
I don't know
I
if
mean, he
he's
should check with his doctor to make sure, but
yeah,
I bet if
yeah.
he checks it out with his doctor, and I can send you a book. I'll send you a book and some research specifically on this so he can talk about with
Cool,
his doctor.
cool.
But I
Yeah.
think it's a way to not have to go vegan,
Or vegan.
but maybe, yeah, not eat as much steak.
Yeah, my concern is I'm just going, dude, what are he's about my size. I'm like, what are you gonna eat to get enough calories doing that? Like
He
salads,
can get enough
You
calories.
can?
Yeah, there's yeah,
Just not enough protein, I guess
I think
specifically.
protein is really the thing. And so
Yeah.
that is the risk, and that's kind of one of the weird negative feedback loops if you end up in that situation is, um, you've got the sensitivity, so you shouldn't be eating you shouldn't be trying to eat as much protein, but then it's gonna make you like you're older, right? You're 79
Mhm.
years old, so you're gonna start to waste away muscularly, and then
Right.
you're gonna be that much more susceptible to other diseases and issues that
Yeah.
arise.
Hot damn.
Yeah, but you can eat beans and rice, and I mean, there are grains and legumes you can combine to heat your protein needs. I don't know if he likes those or how his digestion will
I'm
work with
very
those.
curious. I'm going to visit him in a couple weeks. I'm gonna watch him. What are you eating? Because my whole life, all he's eaten is meat.
Meat and potatoes.
Yeah, big hunter, just the whole thing. All right, so where do I want to go with this? You covered a lot of the questions I have. Thank you. And you're super I knew you were knowledgeable about this, but I'm like, dude, you really know your shit. This is fun. I'm learning a lot. What about these amino soy sauce?
Oh, I
Remember,
love you were
this is
telling me.
like old school health
Yeah,
food store, right? At the
yeah,
salad bar. They always have liquid aminos,
uh-huh,
Bragg's or something.
yeah.
And I always thought it just tasted a little funky, so I never really got on board with it. But what are those aminos, for example, if you happen to know?
So they actually take soy and they break it down into its constituent parts into the individual amino acids, and that is really what it is. It's basically it's like they use a certain kind of acid to break down the soybeans. Whereas with like soy sauce, they actually combine it with wheat and some other sugar to ferment it to get out to kind of develop the amino acids more through this fermentation process. Through the Bragg's, it's like they're breaking down the constituent parts.
Oh,
So they
okay.
both come from soy, and they actually both are full of amino acids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, and what's interesting is actually amino acids themselves are oftentimes in many foods that you try, they are much of the bitter, sour, and umami flavors
oh, okay.
in foods.
That's
So
funny
like,
because your aminos taste like Kool-Aid. They are not umami at all. Yeah.
it's a lot of work to try to.
How did you get them to taste good? I want to know this because I've taken, this essential amino acid powders and stuff like
Mhm.
that. like just white powders, and I mean, just really, really hard to put in a smoothie, or you just kind of
Mhm.
got to put it in water and like, ugh, it'd be a real tough sell for most people
Yeah.
unless they were, they were very committed and really understood how fundamental these are. How'd you guys make them taste good without putting a bunch of weird shit in there?
Tons of iteration. It's really just tons of iteration and being willing to invest more in the flavor profiles. I think, honestly, like people who do like artificial flavor type stuff and sucralose and all kinds of other gross things, like you can also you can cover stuff up pretty well. But if you're trying to do something that's very clean label and not use synthetics and solvents and the gross stuff, it
Mhm.
just takes willing to have a budget for what your flavor is going to
Right.
cost
Did you
and
guys
and
have
iterating a lot.
iterations early on that were super nasty tasting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, horrible. I mean, anyone who's tried our aminos back in the day, they were not as good as they are now.
All right.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
taken a lot of time to keep working on it, and,
In terms of the ingredients, you guys use like a stevia extract, and then there's like a lime flavor and berry
mhm,
flavors,
yeah,
and you have natural flavors. And I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but
it's okay.
I posted something. I posted an Organifi product that I love, Organifi Gold, a couple
Mhm,
days ago on my Instagram because I make this really cool drink with raw milk, and I was like, "This is awesome!" And I took a snap of the ingredient deck: reishi mushrooms, turmeric, ginger,
mhm,
all this great stuff. And then a few people DM me and were like, "What about the natural flavors?" And I was like, "I don't. It's organic. It's
mhm.
USDA 100% organic product. So whatever the natural flavors are, I had to assume are okay." And I reached out to them and they explained it, and I was like, "Yeah, I was right. It's all fine." But the natural flavors to me is always a little bit of a red flag because I read one of Michael Pollan's books years ago,
Mhm.
where he went to these like chemical factories in New Jersey and found out that, quotes, natural flavors are these really gnarly chemicals, and they're basically, the food and supplement industry has lobbied to be able to call things that are actually artificial flavors natural flavors, and it's this kind of ambiguous subcategory of a micro ingredient that you see in a lot of stuff. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about that, because people ask me and I'm like, it's a cost to benefit ratio for me.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, even if the Organifi Gold had like bad natural flavors, there's 99.9% of what's in there is really good for me. So I would personally take one for the team, even if, there was like a caramel flavor or something that was less than awesome. I think I'm going to get more benefit than I am harm. So what's the deal with natural flavors and sweeteners and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I'll say a couple things to start. Number 1, I feel very confident and safe and healthy taking all of the different flavored products that we make, and I give them to my kids, and I was raised by very, very kooky health nut parents who who
Right.
burned it into me to, like, read every label and ask every question and be a skeptic.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean anyone else should take 'em, I'm just saying that, and
Yeah.
secondly, I also understand and respect people choosing not to want to take natural flavors, and for that reason, we offer a capsule form. And in the protein, we offer an unflavored protein. And to even source that protein that we make, I mean, I must have tasted 20 different proteins and looked through so many spec sheets to find a protein that was like awesome, totally unflavored, that doesn't need any flavoring, And I can just drink that protein with water and I like it. It
Yeah.
tastes like milk almost.
Yeah.
Um, so for people who want that and who they just don't even want to deal with any kind of cost benefit analysis, then you can choose that. I think the way you summed it up though is actually like somewhat accurate. What I would say is that with natural flavors, there's a variation of what that can mean. Um, with natural flavors, it means it has to come from something natural originally. And they have different like tinctures and essence and extracts and like different ways of basically getting the flavor out of the original fruit. There are ways of creating natural flavors that come from animal products. You can ask companies, and then some will tell you, some won't tell you. I can tell you ours all come from plants. So our natural flavors actually come from
Not like beaver
beaver.
sperm
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
the beaver butt. Beaver butt's like the classic one. Yeah,
Yeah.
ours come from plants. Like they come from real plants,
Okay.
but they don't necessarily have to. Also, there's different techniques that companies can use to try to get that flavor out. Like as you can imagine, the less money that someone wants to spend on a flavor system, they're going to use cheaper methods to get it out and likely chemicals and like
Solvents and
solvents,
things.
like
Yeah,
gross
yeah,
stuff, the stuff you're not going to like as much.
yeah.
And if you're willing to invest more in developing a higher quality natural flavor, it is that much closer to the original plant, and it uses natural substances to get it. If something is organic, or in some cases, if something is organic suitable, which doesn't actually get labeled then as organic, but uses processes that are the same as what would get an organic label. Those are ways that you can achieve getting a natural flavor that tastes good and doesn't have a bunch of weird, gross stuff in it that you don't want.
Ah, okay.
So natural flavors is a pretty big bucket.
Yeah.
And again, I can understand people being like, well, I don't want to participate in that bucket at all. Or yeah, I'll buy natural flavors like from Organifi, from Kion, from these brands that like I trust and I know, and like
That's my stance on it. And
that's
also,
that's where I'm at on it. But
and
I also have more insider information about,
yeah. No,
these.
that's
Yeah.
cool. I've always wondered about
Yeah.
that because I remember reading that book and I was like, they're all bad. Don't ever touch them. But then again, like I'm also the guy. I'll admit I'm human. I'll be driving around. I'm like, you know, what'd be awesome right now is some peanut M&Ms. And I stop at the. I've talked about this in my podcast a bunch of times, and I'm like, don't do it, and have this little inner battle. And it's like, you know what? Like, you only live once, man. Like, I can't be that perfect. Jeez. I mean, I'm
I
doing
think
so many things right.
that's what I mean. I feel
Every
like
once in a while, I just got to go. You know, whatever. It's good enough. But I don't own a supplement company that
yeah.
has stringent guidelines in terms of that. But the natural flavors, I think the tricky one there, and like natural flavors, natural coloring,
Uh-huh.
it's the ambiguity,
Yeah.
Like if I had a supplement company, I think I would have a whole paragraph on the side of the bottle that's like, here's the deal with natural flavors, here's how ours are extracted, there's no hexane, blah, whatever. Like I would have a spiel for nuts like me that are very discerning, and those few people that DM me on Instagram, like, here's your answer. Like when I hit up Organifi, they were like, yeah, we can explain it here. And, it was something to the effect of what you just said. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm sold. Because I have a responsibility when I promote brands too. I don't want to promote things that could harm people, obviously.
I feel like that's the other really big point that you made two really important points. One is around the perfectionism, which I have a much higher standard, I would say, for products that we're going to make and we're going to sell to a lot of other people, ensuring that it's something that I feel really comfortable giving to them. I do also like I eat out at restaurants sometimes. There's no way that I would buy that oil at my
Yeah,
house.
I know.
Like I'm so sensitive about oils, but it's
Yeah.
like, man, like we just went camping and we stopped at this like a nice steakhouse, but I'm sure whatever they cooked that hamburger, like
Yeah.
but it's like I sometimes do that, but I wouldn't put that in one of our products.
Yeah.
That said, this whole kind of push towards perfectionism that you need to be perfect, Luke, and like, what, Luke? Why would you even like endorse this, or do you know what's in that, et cetera? I mean, I do think you have a certain responsibility to like understand the products if you're talking about them, know what's going on, et cetera. And it's like, I don't know, man, people trying to like find something wrong with every little thing you're gonna do. I mean, and go back again, I respect people if they don't want to take natural flavors. I like 100%
Totally.
respect it. That's why we have products that don't have them in it. And
Yeah.
if it's not something you want to do, like there's another way to
Yeah.
to
Well,
get it.
that's smart, is create options.
Yeah.
That just eliminates the issue. It's
I
like,
was going to
cool.
say on the communication point though too is around marketing. We don't always do. There's a lot of things to do when you're running a business. We don't do the best job of articulating every last point about every little detail we do. We honestly are more focused on trying to make really awesome products than communicate every little awesome thing that we do.
Right.
Because
Right.
it's also like hard. It's like to get that on a label, and like, I already went through last iteration of the label, and it's got to go through regulatory, and then
Yeah.
this, and then it's like, oh, I know. Well, now we made this improvement to the product, and now we can say this new thing about it. It's like it's hard to keep up with telling everyone all the time all the awesome things you're like trying to do with the company.
Yeah.
And our focus more is like on trying to like make the product awesome. And then if someone
Yeah.
asks us, we have the information. We'll talk to you about it. We'll answer your question.
Yeah. Well, now you don't have to answer it to whoever heard this, because I'm the guy that's going to ask the tough questions. What about getting, enough of these essential amino acids? So we know that it's problematic, especially for older people, to get enough of it to retain that protein synthesis and lean muscle mass. What about stuff like bone broth or gelatin protein? Because whenever I've taken that, I'm like, oh, I'm getting tons of amino acids. Am I really, or is it not as awesome as I think?
So there's a little subtlety in the protein. I'm going to handle the gelatin and collagen first
Okay.
because those are really closely related.
Okay.
Collagen and gelatin basically are the same thing. Gelatin is just hydrolyzed. It's basically like a cooked down version of the
What?
of the
Really?
collagen. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And they come from the collagen of animals. So like bones, joints, hide, same stuff that is collagen in our body,
Right.
bones, joints,
Horse hooves.
skin. Yeah. So, which my mom used to like scare me when I was a kid around like I shouldn't eat Jello because we were pescatarian, like comes
Yeah.
from horse hooves or whatever.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. You're not eating horse hooves if you eat gelatin, most likely.
Yeah, I hope
Um,
not.
so gelatin and collagen are interesting in that they are not a traditional complete protein. So they will not give you the benefit of a steak or whey protein or even some like plant proteins that are like combined in a special way or essential amino acids. They simply do not have all the essential amino acids at proper ratios. What they do have is a lot of glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, which are very cool, awesome, non essential amino acids that specifically support joints, skin, hair, nails. So if you really want to support your joints, hair, skin, nails, the idea of kind of mega dosing with this other animal's collagen to support that, it makes like generally like logical sense.
Okay.
It wouldn't necessarily be true though. I always want to like
Mhm.
challenge that. Like people think, oh, if I take like this other animal's collagen, it's going to make my collagen better. But in human studies, they have shown that it does.
Cool.
So consuming higher amounts of those will support with skin, hair.
And that would be true of bone broth too, which has collagen. It
So,
has the collagen and gelatin in there,
so
which
this
you're
is
saying are
this
the
is a
same
more
thing.
nuanced thing about bone broth. If you're really just cooking the bones, like if all the meat's been scraped off
Mhm.
and you're just cooking down the bones and extracting that, it is going to function a lot like gelatin or collagen.
Okay.
If they leave meat on the actual bone and they're cooking that down, so there's actual beef muscle protein that's included in the final product, then it's going to have some amount of essential amino acids.
Oh, okay.
But generally, it's not going to have that much. Like I think even in like very popular products like that where they do that, maybe like 30% is a beef protein. So still what you're really, if you're eating bone broth or collagen or gelatin, just think I'm supporting my joints, my hair, my skin, my nails.
Got it. Okay, cool.
I'm not supporting like overall muscle protein synthesis.
All right, I'm gonna give you my morning smoothie and you critique it, okay?
Okay.
Actually, you probably won't because there's 2 Kion products in it. But because I'm not hungry in the morning, but I
Yeah.
feel much better if I eat a lot of protein and fat right away.
Yeah.
I used to drink like buttered coffee and go
Mhm.
half the day and just be full of cortisol, and I was
Mhm.
psycho. I didn't know it at the time. I was like, this is awesome. I don't have to eat anymore. I was like,
Mhm.
kind of in borderline eating disorder. My morning smoothies: 2 pastured egg yolks,
Uh-huh.
2 huge ass scoops of this Kion whey protein,
Uh-huh.
1 scoop of the Kion aminos, 2 scoops of the Newtopia Collagenius, like mushroom collagen
Mhm.
protein powder, a little bit of MCT oil, and and a big scoop of collagen protein. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, and your creatine.
Okay.
Did I bring that up here? Yeah, I have
Yeah.
the creatine right here, and 1 scoop of the creatine. And I feel freaking amazing on that. Am I missing anything in that, or is that like
That's a lot. I mean,
or is it overkill?
that's what I would say. From an amino acid consumption kind of goal,
Yeah.
I think it's great. It might be overkill.
Okay.
And here's how it might be overkill. But first of all, I would say is the most important thing, Luke, is that you feel great. So if you feel great, man, just ignore everything I'm about to say to you because it
Okay.
doesn't matter, dude. It's like none of this is like there's nothing you're doing that's bad.
Okay, that's
Okay.
good.
So ideally, if you want to feel great, the amount of protein that you should eat on a daily basis, or if you kind of backed into it, some amount of amino acids at a 3x or a 4x potential based on your age, would be 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight.
See, this always loses me because there's math involved. Like,
So let's just say
I'll Google like how much protein should I eat, and then it's like per kilogram of body. I'm like lost.
we'll
I'm
just
out.
let's just make it simple.
I'm
Let's
100. I'm 185 pounds, I think.
Okay. And do you like that weight?
I would wish 10 of it was not around my
Great. So
spare tire.
let's call it 175.
Okay.
Okay. So that's your ideal weight is 175. Ideally, you would eat no kilograms, it's just pounds, 175 grams of protein a day.
Oh, that sounds like a lot.
It sounds like a lot,
How much
but you're eating a lot right
How
here.
much is in 2 scoops of the Kion?
40. So you're eating a lot.
I'm
40,
getting 80 already.
40 plus if you do that and you count like 1 scoop of that is like 15, you're at like 55 plus the collagen's not complete, but like, and the egg yolks, that's just fat. I mean, you're getting a lot. But so wait, let me finish.
Okay.
Because I think this is going to be helpful.
This is great. And
So-
I'm not trying to be selfish here. Hopefully this will benefit
I think this is
someone listening who is trying to figure this out too.
Yeah, I think this is very super practical, very useful information for literally everyone, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, or you're athletic or you're not. All I would say is like, if you're older, your amino acid needs are even higher. And if you're highly active, your amino acid needs are higher because you're encouraging more muscle protein breakdown when you like do tons of physical activity.
Okay.
But let's just say overall, everyone should be aiming for, last thing I'd say too is if you're trying to lose weight, increasing your protein intake short term is also even better. So I would go even higher than this. But let's just say everyone generally aim for 1 gram of protein or the equivalent of 1 gram of protein in terms of muscle protein synthesis per pound of ideal body weight. So 175 grams is what you want to eat every day.
Okay.
Then ideally, you would break that up into 5 or 6 meals. And the reason for that, but you don't have to, man. And this is what I'm saying. It's like, don't get perfect. Like, you don't have to, is at some point, your body can't use all the amino acids right at that moment to stimulate new muscle protein synthesis. And so then what it does is it ends up converting it into glucose for you to use for energy as ATP and urea. Now, if you're healthy, you don't have to worry about any of this. And if you like eating protein more than you like eating carbs or fat, it's a totally fine choice in terms of what you use for calories during the day to fuel your body. But if you divide that by 5 or by 6 times, then that's kind of the optimal amount of amino acids and protein you would eat at a time to stimulate muscle protein synthesis that then lasts 3 hours. That is why bodybuilders eat little things of chicken or tuna fish.
Oh, I always wondered about
every
that.
3 hours, and they even wake up in the middle of the night and
The
they
meal
do it.
prep. The meal prep.
Yeah.
I've had gym rat buddies, and they're like, got to get my protein in. I'm doing meal prep. And and they're carrying around little Tupperware things. Yeah. I never looked into it. I was just like, that looks hard.
Yeah. So the reason for that is because basically the muscle protein synthesis spike lasts 3 hours. So when you consume the protein or the amino acids, it lasts for 3 hours. But there's only so much you can really use at one time for that. So optimally, you would break that up into 5 or 6 times throughout the day. If that doesn't work for you and it's 4, fine. If it's 3, fine. Like don't overthink it. So what I just note in that is this is not going to test my math, but if we divide 175 by 5, that's 35. Thank you.
You guys are impressive.
Yeah, 35. So just alone,
I couldn't even do that with a pen and paper.
So this
you had your calculator.
Okay, calculator, yeah.
You cheated.
So just 2 scoops of this gives you 40 grams of protein. So taking the essential amino acids at the same time, I don't want to go too subtle of science. Because of the profile of the amino acids and because of your age, it is actually improving the utilization of the protein itself, but it's a little overkill. Instead, what I might do is another time during the day, 3 hours later, in between meals, take 1 to 2 scoops or up to 3 scoops actually of Kion aminos, and then you will stimulate another muscle protein synthesis spike.
Rad. I'm doing this.
Yeah. So basically, instead of, I think the easiest thing for most people who eat 3 meals a day is do 3 solid meals a day that have, 30 to 50 grams of protein, depending on what your weight is. And then 2 more times a day, take essential amino acids.
And
take a protein shake if you don't want to do essential amino acids.
With these amino acids, I mean, you can just stir them in water, right?
I think they're delicious in water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we worked really hard to make them drinkable in water.
Yeah.
Stirring doesn't always work well because they're not agglomerated, which is a whole nother supplement rabbit hole. We don't nano them, like break them out into smaller molecules.
Right.
If you shake them,
or
if you shake them in a shaker with water and with some ice, they get perfectly dissolved. But if you try to stir them with a stir spoon, it's kind of hard.
I like this, and this is my next question. Actually, I do the aminos with some of the Organifi Red,
Uh
like
huh.
the beetroot
Uh
powder
huh.
stuff, the
Yeah.
berries.
That's
Um,
great as a pre-workout.
that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, because that's going to
Yeah,
really increase your nitric
and
oxide. Yeah.
I shake it up,
Uh huh.
and then right before I get on the ARX machine, I pound a hydro shot. It's like super vasodilator kind of thing, nitric oxide
Yeah.
boost situation. I mean, it's no joke how much harder I can work with
Uh huh.
those two things.
Yeah.
So that's my little routine. But yeah, I put it in a thermos and I shake it up and I kind of sip it on the way to the gym, and then when I'm there, I pound it right before I get on the machine, and then during, in between
Yeah.
my sets and stuff. And that seems to work really well. But that was one of my questions. I just made that up, but that makes
That
sense.
makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah, that
cool.
makes sense to combine an NO booster with essential amino acids.
Okay,
So the
cool.
NO booster basically is, yeah, it's opening your blood vessels.
Yeah.
And essential amino acids do that also to some degree, but the primary role of the essential amino acids before, during, and after your workout is that they are going to naturally support energy production at the site of the muscles themselves. They're also going to prevent muscle protein breakdown. So you won't
Oh,
get as sore, and thus you'll
yeah.
have more stamina and more endurance, and they will stimulate muscle protein synthesis. They basically like 2 to 3x like the benefits of your exercise.
That's rad.
Yeah, so
I
and you
love
can take
that.
them before, during, and
Yeah.
after. Yeah.
That's interesting you mentioned being sore because do you know the ARX machines?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
these things, it's like an AI robot that's fighting you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, there is no way you could lift that much free weight without hurting yourself,
Yeah.
just period. It's so cool. But unfortunately, they're like 60 grand. So you can find ARX machines at different gyms and stuff. But anyway, I go over there because they let me sneak in there on Sunday mornings and work out with a couple people. And when I used to go in, and maybe I'm just getting stronger and a little more fit from just going every Sunday, I'm pretty good at the compliance. But when I would push that weight really hard, like the leg press, for example, I would get all like ringing in my ears and like I kind of have to pop my ears and just feel super funky. And then even when I would be driving home, I'm like feeling like not great.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't think it's like dangerous, but just working out that hard. But when I got on the routine of doing these aminos and the beats, all the things I said, I never get sore and I never get that like ear ringing weird, like your head's gonna pop thing. Like I feel totally fine. And I'm not even that tired during it. Like my heart rate's not even that high. It's crazy.
So
But I'm doing more weight all the time. Like
in
I'm getting
terms of the
stronger and
recovery and the
stronger.
soreness, it is the essential amino acids.
Oh, score, bro.
Yeah.
Nice
And so,
work.
yeah. So, like, really hardcore athletes, like CrossFit athletes who are, all different types of people use essential amino acids, but those really hardcore athletes, that is probably where they get the most benefit from it, is because they're eating tons of like these hardcore, bodybuilders and
Right.
CrossFit people eating tons of protein. When they start using something like Kion aminos, they see incredible improvements in their recovery. Just like way less sore,
Yeah.
it's way easier to get back to the gym the
Yeah.
next time.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool. What's
Hmm.
the deal with these speaking of gyms and like gym bros? Remember back in the day, uh, guys that were trying to build muscle would be taking these branch chain amino
Uh huh.
acids. What's
Yeah.
up with those?
So branch chain,
Like GNC kind of
yeah,
style stuff,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. So this is an interesting story in like science evolving and us learning more, and then supplement companies and marketing just continuing to like sell the stuff that's been disproven.
Uh,
So branch chain amino acids are actually three of the essential amino acids. So if you were to just take actually three of the most prevalent amino acids in this formula, but not include the other six. And the science behind this is that what they started to discover was, I mean, I've been simplifying it up until now that there's these nine essential amino
yeah.
acids, and that's what stimulates muscle protein synthesis, et cetera. There's one primary essential amino acid called leucine, which is a branch chain amino acid, and then isoleucine and valine, which are the two other branch chain amino acids, and they're called branch just because it's the way that their carbon skeleton is like designed, or the way that their molecules are designed. They have like this branch. Um, they are the three that are extremely important in kicking off muscle protein synthesis and sustaining it, but they literally do not work without the other 6 amino acids. So they discovered in isolation in these little mechanistic studies or combining BCAAs with other protein sources or in these really specific training environments that it would prevent muscle protein breakdown or stimulate muscle protein synthesis. But then over the last 20 years, 30 years, it's been shown over and over again that if you don't consume the other 6 at the same time, then there's absolutely no increase in muscle protein synthesis. But
Wah, wah.
they just keep selling them, man.
Well, that's, I think that's the kind of the GNC stores. There's kind of just the basic stuff. Or even if you go to CVS or Rite Aid, right, and you go in the vitamin section, you see stuff like this where it's kind of like people that are just, oh, I heard that's good for you. And, oh, I take that, but they're not geeks like us that are really going to get into the nuance of it. Maybe that's why this stuff
and
is
even
still,
some brands, like very big brands, still market their product as these are brands like I wouldn't buy because they're full of artificial flavors and artificial sweeteners and just junkier products, but they'll actually market it as BCAAs, but then they include all the EAAs in it because the science has been proven that it's
that's funny.
that it doesn't work without the other ones.
That's funny.
But like there's still a
Just
narrative.
because the BCAAs is like a catch.
There's a narrative with
phrase.
Jim Rose that that's what you're supposed to take. Yeah.
Cool. All right. For those listening, if you guys by this time you're probably like, oh, I want to try these aminos. If you guys go to lukestorey.com/Kion, these guys have a nice landing page they've made for me. And if you go there, you're going to automatically save up to 20%. lukestorey.com/Kion. Highly recommend, by the way, not just because you're here. I'd be saying it even if you weren't here. Let me see. I've got some more stuff in here. In terms of the other proteins, and I'm kind of going to digress a bit here just because there's one question, and I wanted to see if you find this to be a fact. Hemp protein, when it comes to like plant-based proteins, has been one that I would say I tolerate more so. If I go get a smoothie over here at Juice Land down the street, if it has rice protein, I have them swap it out. And I'm like, oh, it feels good. I digest it okay. But I've heard that there can be problems with heavy metal contamination with hemp protein specifically. Is there any truth to that? Them sucking up metals out of the soil and then being kind of contaminated?
Yeah, I'm just gonna bum you out though on like a way bigger level when talking about this.
Man.
So naturally occurring in the ground with many plants, there are heavy metals. And I say gonna bum you out because like chocolate is the biggest case of this.
Come on.
Chocolate is very high in heavy metals.
I just learned like cacao is also really high in oxalates too. I'm like, God damn, come on.
So I would just say like anything that grows in the ground is likely going to be high in heavy metals. Which honestly is also one of the reasons why I've kind of strayed from trying to make too many botanical based products with Kion is because they're more difficult to formulate. And if you want to include a bunch of stuff or like mix these really cool components, you're going to end up hitting like lead levels that are just I'm not stoked about.
Yeah.
So if you take that idea and think, hey, even like a bar of chocolate, like there's bars of chocolate. Well, there's certain types of legislation or deals with companies where they don't have to label it, like certain chocolate companies, et cetera. But I think there's like certain chocolate in California, it's even labeled as Prop 65 because it's just because it's like a bar of chocolate. Like it does have this level of lead, and I know if you live in California, like tons of stuff has Prop 65 on it. But then if you take that idea and you apply it to botanicals or to protein powders, if you want to have like a few grams of some type of botanical, it is just going to have a lot of heavy metals in it. If you then try to take rice or pea or hemp and you want to extract all the protein from it, you're basically concentrating this thing that typically has all these other things in it, carbohydrates, for example, you're concentrating the heavy metals as well.
Oh,
so yes.
Man.
So when you take plant proteins, they're just naturally going to be higher in these heavy metals. Now, I kind of present all that though, again, to say, I think if people really research it, they'll realize that, again, this is true for like a lot, anything that's highly concentrated and grows from the ground. I mean, not everything, but I mean, again, if you're eating like whole produce that grows from the ground, well, you're getting all these other component parts in it and fiber, et cetera.
And metals would be diluted.
You're diluted in it.
Yeah.
But then if you boil down all these heads of broccoli and all I want is this one little thing from the broccoli, you're naturally getting a lot of those heavy metals.
Ayahuasca has a lot of metals. Thinking of something that you boil down for a really, really long time.
I mean, I wouldn't,
Buyer beware.
Maybe the ayahuasca is really just a a heavy metal
Yeah.
allergic reaction. That's what
Yeah,
people are
right,
going
right,
through. Yeah.
totally. All right, that's good information. Then what about, okay, so you guys have a whey protein,
Hmm.
and as you said, there's like you go to the store, there's a zillion whey proteins. Are they all created equal?
No.
And why is whey protein a good protein versus, you see like bone broth protein, and we
Hmm.
talked about collagen and gelatin protein and stuff like that. Why is whey that I guess comes from milk
Yeah,
originally?
yeah. Whey comes from milk.
Why is it awesome?
So there's two main proteins that come from milk that are considered awesome. One's whey, one's casein. And whey has become more popular because it's more tolerable to more people. And even in studies where they show how well muscle protein synthesis works over multiple periods throughout the day, whey is superior. Casein kind of has a longer burn, so like super biohacker bodybuilders will like take casein before they go to bed to stimulate a longer muscle
Isn't casein the
proteins
thing that
synthesis
that
spike.
many people are allergic to in
Well,
dairy?
that's the thing too. It's like whey is more tolerable
Okay.
by more people.
Okay.
So whey, though, basically has the most ideal essential amino acid profile and is highly digestible across all different protein sources that exist in nature. So that's why
Okay.
whey has become so popular, is
Okay.
because it's literally just if you want to get protein, it's like the highest, it's the most digestible, best profile of essential amino acids. Then within whey, there is whey concentrate, which is kind of like the least processed form, or you can get whey isolate. We produced a whey isolate, and the difference of whey isolate is when I say process, it's basically just filtered more. It's a cold filtering process that removes the carbohydrates. So what you end up with is something with less of the carbohydrates and virtually lactose free.
Oh,
So
wow.
if you have any type of like lactose allergy, most people can totally tolerate a whey protein isolate. They can't tolerate a whey protein concentrate.
Ah, okay.
So
Okay.
that's kind of the main difference between
Yeah.
concentrate and isolate.
Yeah.
And then there's just like pure quality. What's the quality of the cows and the milk that you're getting it from?
That's a
So
huge concern,
yeah,
like
is it grass fed? Is it organic
antibiotics.
corn? Is it like,
Right.
what's the profile? So in creating this product, it really is just it's basically a project of sourcing. It's
Okay.
just deep, deep, deep dive sourcing on what is the highest quality, grass fed whey protein isolate that's available on the market. And
Okay.
that's what we did. So
Okay.
we just looked for that. We checked out everyone who could hit the specs. They're really only like a couple. And then you taste them and you see which one's best. And then that's the one you go with. Then on the flavoring profile for different types of protein powders. Well, there's one other thing. Sometimes people will add additional digestive enzymes into the protein. We're just trying to make the cleanest, simplest protein we could make. If you want to add additional digestive enzymes, you can do that. We don't
Oh,
think that.
yeah, I do that in my morning smoothie. I knew I
Uh-huh.
was forgetting something. I'll put some Bioptimizers, just empty capsules into the
Yeah,
smoothie.
that makes sense. Um, for us, we were trying to make something cleaner and simpler, so we
Yeah,
didn't
I think
include
yours has like 3 ingredients,
that.
which I like. I like when I go to a
That's what I
product and I'm just
wanted.
like,
Yeah.
the fewer ingredients, the better, because to me, it speaks to the closer it is to an actual food,
And that's
you
exactly what I
know?
wanted. Was
Yeah.
like I just want the simplest thing possible. So then it has organic, natural flavors. Very simple ones, chocolate and ones vanilla. And then we added pink Himalayan salt. And that salt, oh, sorry, and the sweetener,
Mhm.
the stevia sweetener. So yeah, it has basically protein, stevia, salt, and the natural flavor.
What are some, and some people listening might find this question pedestrian, but maybe some
Uh-huh.
will benefit from it. What are some of the less awesome sweeteners that'll be used in protein powders and various health
I
foods?
think it's well, I think
You
it's
mentioned sucralose
yeah, I think
earlier.
it's sucralose and aspartame. It's the artificial sweeteners that
Okay.
I think are just disputed what like how harmful they potentially are. And this is one of those things where it's like I was just raised thinking artificial sweeteners are bad. Like
Yeah.
stay away from them. They're really terrible. I think there's been really interesting recent studies that have come out um, comparing. There's a lot of review that I saw. Like Huberman just did a review of it, and this guy Biolane, he tends to be more evidence based, like anti alt health type people.
Alt health?
Yeah,
Yeah.
alt health,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But it's interesting to get lots of different people's opinions on this. And It's like a recent study came out that compared all of these, and it's interesting to see which one's worse, which one's not. I just try to stay away from anything artificial.
Yeah.
So I'm just like not inclined to do aspartame or sucralose
I
or
remember back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were a couple documentaries. I used to watch all these like freaky documentaries about all the bad things,
Mhm.
fluoride in the water and all this. And there were a couple that came out on aspartame and they were terrifying. I mean, I was like, that's one thing I mean, like I said, I'll eat some M&Ms here and there. I
Yeah.
like eat out at a shady restaurant once in a while, but aspartame is pretty non-negotiable. I mean, that's something that's like MSG, aspartame. There's certain things that are just, really, really do my best to avoid without being too neurotic about it. But those are like red flag, red alert. Don't put in your body. Neurotoxins,
That's where I'm at. I'm
Yeah.
just
Okay. Last thing I want to cover here is coffee.
yeah.
So I remember, was
Mm.
it the first thing you guys made?
No,
Was
it wasn't.
coffee?
Aminos
Oh,
was
okay.
was the first,
Aminos
but
was the first.
coffee was soon after.
Because I remember Ben
Yeah.
talking about, oh, we came up with this clean coffee,
Uh-huh.
and I don't drink coffee every day, but I enjoy it a lot when I do enjoy it. And there was all this noise a few years back about mold in coffee. Dave Asprey comes out with this
Mhm.
bulletproof coffee, and I was like, oh shit! No wonder if I go to Starbucks and drink a coffee, I'm psychotic for the next 3 hours. And then I got that coffee and was like, oh, I thought I was like sensitive to caffeine.
Uh-huh.
And then I surmised that maybe I'm just sensitive to the mycotoxins or essentially the excrement of mold in coffee. So I've always looked for like mold free coffee. But then you have this other, these people that came out after that. They're like, oh, it's just a marketing scam. The mold doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything. The mold is not a prevalent issue and yada, yada. So you have in the coffee world, aside from pesticides and just
Mhm.
roasting and all the other things that make it taste good and be non toxic, but maybe for people that aren't even aware of this, or give us an update on where we are with like mold free coffee. Cause I know that when I heard about your coffee, that was a selling point, and I bought some. I was like,
Mhm.
cool. I trust Ben. He's a discerning guy, knows his shit. So I got it and I was like, great, it's tested for mold. That's all I need to know. Well, and it's organic.
Yeah.
Those were the two criteria. So what's up with the mold and coffee issue right now?
So I would say big picture, when we try to make our coffee, we're thinking overall how to just make the cleanest coffee we can make with the least amount of other weird stuff in it. And that is both pesticides and mold. And any other types of toxins that could potentially be introduced during the process of production. Or, yeah, I mean, like growing it, harvesting, and production of the coffee. In terms of mold, what I would say is that the critiques of people saying, hey, it's not as big a deal as people think, on one side, they're right. On one side, it's not like all the coffee, it's not like all the, especially specialty grade organic coffee is full of mold. It's not as big of a risk, I think, as or as prevalent as maybe people tried to paint as a story in the past. I think if you're buying really cheap coffee, I mean, I'm not attacking Starbucks. I don't know. But I mean, they're buying a lot of coffee from a lot of different places in the world. They have a pretty intense business pressures. All huge coffee companies have pretty big business pressures to just like make sure there's coffee in the cups at every single airport in the world. So if they had to ensure that there was absolutely no mold ever in their coffee, I'm sure that would be just hard because they're selling a lot of coffee and they're mixing a lot of different coffee beans. So, you know, I don't know why when you drink Starbucks coffee you didn't feel great. I don't like Starbucks coffee. I think it tastes gross, and I also get kind of wigged out when I drink it, but I have no idea why that is. Um, but if I try to make a really clean coffee, there are ways to ensure that there's not going to be mold in it and to ensure that there's not going to be pesticides in it. What's really interesting is just because something is organic doesn't mean that there definitely will not be any pesticides in the final
Oh,
product.
come on.
Well, so here, so here,
Dude.
here's
Especially with coffee, that's
yeah,
something I mean, I eat things that aren't
yeah,
organic out of convenience sometimes.
yeah.
With coffee, I'm like, I wouldn't buy
Yeah, but you're
coffee
grinding
beans.
it up and soaking it in water.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I wouldn't
yeah,
intentionally buy it
yeah.
unless I knew that it wasn't sprayed with pesticides.
So first thing I want to say is I think that most people are trying their best to like just do good. People aren't out there like trying to deceive people or um, hurt people. They really are trying to do their best. So I think the idea behind certifications and the people that run certification programs are thinking, hey, there's this consumer out there that wants this product. They want it to be verified. They want to be able to trust it. Do I just trust the individual companies? or like how is this consumer able to decide whether or not they should trust that this product is what they say it is? And thus they develop certifying bodies. And these certifying bodies then develop sets of rules and they evaluate products based on those rules. And that could be for coffee, it could be organic, it could be fair trade, it could be Rainforest Certified Alliance. There's all these different ways that they can certify coffees. All it means if a coffee ends up being certified is that it made it through the checklist. Now, that checklist, as you can imagine, is a system that's made up, and there's obviously going to be like holes in it sometimes. So, one of the things that we discovered in us trying to make the cleanest coffee that we can possibly make is to test coffee at multiple stages of the supply chain. So, the way that we get the highest quality coffee that we can make is by sourcing from very specific farms where we know that it's organic and it's specialty grade, which means they got the check mark. So, not using pesticides, right, et cetera, on their coffee. That said, these farms could be next to another farm that does use pesticides. And some of those
Right.
pesticides potentially get onto their farm or they spray one time and there's one lot that gets it, et cetera. So that is a risk that could happen. So we test for that. We also ensure that we choose farms that use mechanical dryers. This is where one potential place that mold could come in. When you're picking a lot of beans and they're wet, you can lay them out on the actual, like, out on huge, like, tarps and they just dry in the sun. Or you can use these mechanical drying machines that actually put the beans in and that dry them automatically. If you dry the beans right away, you're going to reduce the risk of any mold developing on them. That doesn't mean that if you dry beans on the tarps that you're going to get mold, though. It just means that if you dry them mechanical dryer, there's going to be that much less of a chance. So we
Okay.
ensure we get an organic farm. We ensure they have a mechanical dryer. And then when we import the beans into the US, we test the green beans. We test the green beans to make sure that there's absolutely no pesticides in them and that there's no mold or other types of toxins on it. What we started to find when we were doing our own testing on some of these beans, and we won't accept them if they don't pass this, is that somehow organic beans had some trace of pesticides. And we're like, well, I had to trust. How is that possible? Well, one thing that can happen even outside of the farming situation is that they will take organic beans and put them in a like a large bag to put previous conventional green beans in. If I just put a bunch of conventional green beans in that bag that were raised with pesticides, there are traces of pesticides in that bag, and then they get on the beans themselves.
Ah,
Which
yeah.
it's not like the importer is like trying to mess up the organic beans.
Right.
They
It's just,
probably don't know. They probably don't care. They're
yeah.
just like someone wants to buy organic beans. They're packing them in the sacks, etc. So we test at that stage. Then also things that we found is when we would bring the beans into roasting, that sometimes if a machine had been cleaned with some type of chemical component, that could get off on the beans. So we also had to work through making sure that none of the machines were cleaned with any type of, chemical solvent,
Oh,
which
man.
that's like you're getting pretty anal. You're getting pretty
Yeah.
like annoying. So, so
All your
all,
suppliers are like, we don't want to work with them anymore. This is too hard.
but honestly, we are by far the most annoying, the most like,
Yeah.
just I think particular frustrating kind of partner. But at the same time, we're really cool. Like we're nice. We're not trying to give people a hard time. We know people aren't messing up. We're just like, no, we're not going to buy that. Like we
Yeah.
want to work with you, we want to get this done, but it has to hit these specs. So when you test on the green, when you source from the right places, you do really good audits of wherever you're getting the coffee beans from, you test the green beans, and then you're testing on the actual batches of once coffee's been made, you can be really certain that something didn't just get an organic stamp on it, but that we actually tested every stage of the process.
Brad.
So, all that to say, going back to your question about like, is the mold thing a real thing? Yes, mold is on some coffees. Is it as widespread as like huge marketing hype might like to say that it is? Probably not. But if you want to be really certain that your coffee is as clean as it can possibly be, you probably just need to go with a brand that is doing multiple stages of testing and that they're actually committed to that. And if you have mold sensitivities, then it's probably that much more important. If you're just trying to eat clean, then maybe you can get coffee at your local coffee shop sometimes and and that's me. Like
Yeah.
I only drink Kion coffee, obviously, but I'm not afraid to drink a specialty grade organic coffee from a nice coffee shop. I'm not like
Yeah.
terrified I'm gonna,
Yeah. I'm
get
in the
sick.
same boat.
Yeah.
And I definitely notice that I tend to feel much better if I go to a little hipster coffee shop and drink whatever. I don't even see if it's organic. I'm just
Uh,
like, I want a latte. But I don't tend to get those like jitters and
It's
that
their
weird.
mustache. Their
Yeah,
mustache calms you down.
yeah. They
Yeah.
have to have like the 1800s coal miner mustache for sure. But yeah, I notice, oh, I feel fine. I kind of track it. But if I'm in an airport and I'm like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to get a Starbucks, it's pretty much guaranteed I'm going to feel like anxious.
Mhm.
And like I said, for years I didn't drink coffee because I thought it was the caffeine. And I would tell people, oh, I'm sensitive to caffeine. Start getting mold free coffee. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. It's not the coffee, it's the freaking mold. So thank you for that information. I learned a lot. Um, Next one on coffee is I've heard people say in the periphery of the health space that if you pre-grind beans, because you guys sell whole
Mhm.
beans, which is what I get my
Yep.
Kion coffee. I think at one point you guys sent me a ground one, and I saved it for the zombie apocalypse. You know,
Uh-huh.
I'm not gonna I'll drink any coffee in the zombie apocalypse, but I saved it. But then I started hearing these murmurs of like, oh, it oxidizes if you
Uh-huh.
pre-grind coffee. Then these are beans, right? And they have these oils in them, and those oils become rancid essentially,
Mhm.
like any oils would if they were exposed and they became oxidized from the air and exposure like that. What's your take on ground versus whole beans?
So again, this is like a cost benefit analysis and kind of what you want, what works for you. I would definitely prefer whole bean because when you grind it, it does start to oxidize, and that destroys the flavor, and it also becomes a more rancid product over time. That said, one of the key components of our coffee process is that when we finally put the roasted beans into a bag, we go through a process of nitrogen flushing, which basically removes the oxygen. That's why we can sell our coffee for a longer period of time. And when you open a bag of Kion coffee, it smells so good and dank, and it's like awesome
I
coffee.
agree. Dank would be the operative
Dank,
word.
dank is the word. Whereas sometimes, even if you buy coffee from a local coffee shop, it's like not as fresh. It's because it's been if they didn't roast it in the last basically whole beans, freshly roasted, will stay really good for like 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, they start to get kind of bad. If you nitrogen flush it, it extends it months.
Oh wow.
If you grind, and so they will actually will start to oxidize even without grinding them. Like the beans will just start to get gross after like 2 weeks. Um, Not gross, but I'm being very picky. Like
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
yeah.
super picky about coffee. If you grind coffee, you've got about 24 hours. That said, some people don't have a grinder and they don't want to grind coffee, and they've always like just bought ground coffee, but they care about their health, they care about having something that's organic, they want to avoid other toxins in their coffee, and they just want they don't want to have to grind it, you know. And so for them, I would happily create a pre-ground coffee. There's other things that have come up like, well, you make little Keurig cups where it's like in a plastic thing, and I'm like, hot water through a
In plastic,
plastic.
I
I'm
never
like,
liked that either.
I'm like,
Dude, even like coffee makers, like that's why
uh-huh,
I don't have an espresso
uh-huh,
machine. It would take me too much research
uh-huh,
to find, and if anyone listening knows of an espresso machine, dude, even just cheap metals,
uh-huh.
aluminum little tubes and parts that are getting boiling water through them, those little Keurig cups, like putting boiling ass water through a bunch of plastic is just a bad idea. Like
So,
in hotels, the cheap coffee
yeah.
makers, they're like all
Oh,
made of plastic.
plastic
Yeah, I'm
with
just,
hot water.
again, like you got to live your life. It's whatever, but it's not optimal, put it that way.
And so for me, it's like ground coffee. I don't think it's harming anyone. I think it's an inferior cup of coffee. It's not as good and it's not as fresh. But I don't think it's like toxic for them.
Yeah.
That said, like
Yeah.
hot water through plastic, I can't. And there's a lot of demand for it. Like a lot of, clean
Well,
coffee companies
thank
will
you for
do that.
not doing that.
Yeah.
Like your edge is like, all right, we'll sell you some ground coffee. It's it's not as good as whole beans, but I'm not gonna make you a little plastic, toxin bomb. I got a question for you
Yeah.
about that. So I find it to be a pain in the ass to grind my beans every time I want to have a coffee. So
Uh-huh.
I bought this little. I can show it to you on the way out, but it's a little coffee grinder, and you fill up the little tub,
Uh-huh.
and then you just hit the button, and it gives you however
Yeah.
many
Like a nice
tablespoons.
little burr grinder.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's super convenient.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
run it. But it has occurred to me, I'm like, when I fill that up, those beans sit in there for about a month before I get through them and
Uh-huh.
then fill it back up again. Do you think my beans are like losing any
They probably
action?
are. I mean, I
Because
might
it's not being nitrogen flushed in there. I mean, there's oxygen in there and
yeah,
some
I
light
might
is
just
going through.
I might just like put enough in it for the week and then reseal it.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Noted.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
you'll notice a fresher coffee.
Okay, cool. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. With all this stuff, it's like I'm always going for with guests. I'm always going for the optimal, perfect way. and then you create a spectrum and you just do the best you can.
Exactly.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like no one is gonna do any of this stuff perfect, and I know from personal experience being too neurotic about all of it actually is not mentally healthy
It's not
either.
it's like life's not fun
Yeah,
or
so,
joyful or
you
happy,
know,
right?
but
Yeah.
I do like to create a benchmark, for listeners and for
Yeah.
myself and get information like the real deal on shit. Okay, here's optimal, and then you have a scale, right, to like Folgers. What's that? Like
Yeah.
Folgers
Yeah.
instant coffee would be like on the swaggest end of this, right? And Kion coffee, whole beans, get them right away, keep them sealed, grind just enough for your 1 cup, kind
Yes.
of thing. And use a French press, that's what I do. So
I use
for
a nice Breville espresso maker.
yeah?
I'm on the
Are
espresso
those
game. Yeah.
good?
Yeah, they're great.
Okay. Do you
I'll
think
send you a link.
you
Yeah.
think they're all right with the heavy metals and
I think
stuff?
they're okay.
Because I am kind of paranoid about running hot water
Yeah,
through a
these
bunch
are all
of cheap
steel.
metals.
It's like steel. It's not aluminum.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How much are they? A lot.
$700-800.
Okay.
But you do that.
Worth saving for?
You do that, and then you have a pretty awesome cup of coffee, like whenever you want it,
Well, that's the thing too.
and
I
it's
mean,
freshly ground.
you're gonna go
ground. Yeah.
drop $6
Yeah.
on a coffee at the coffee shop and gas and time if you like. That's what I have to do if I want an espresso.
And it's not as good a coffee. I mean, that's the thing. It's like I
Right.
am that particular. Like I want Kion quality
Yeah.
coffee every
Not
day.
just clean, but that tastes good. Your coffee
Yeah.
tastes freaking dope.
Thanks.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Well, listen, man. I think we did the damn thing.
It was fun.
I think we did it. We covered everything I wanted to. Thank you for your generosity of time. I don't know why, but sometimes it's like, even if someone has a brand they're talking about,
Yeah.
like, maybe you guys will sell some Kion at lukestory.com/Kion. And I'm sure it's worth your time, but I always have so many questions. And when I'm making my manuscripts, I'm like, oh, this is kind of overkill, Luke. Like, who's going to sit there for 2 hours? But everyone does,
I like when you were saying like the number of questions you have. I was like, wow, that was a lot of questions.
I'm
but
ambitious.
But we really did it.
I'm intensely curious. And also when I'm prepping the manuscript for shows, I'm preemptively thinking of questions that I'll likely get from people when they're like, why didn't you ask them about this?
Uh-huh.
I'm like, you're right. That happened to me yesterday. Someone sent me a message about something that I posted, and they're like, what about this? And I'm like, oh, you're so right. So that would have made the interview 2.5 hours instead of 2, So thank you for hanging in there with me in the audience today.
I enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, it's always good to see you too.
You're a great host and interviewer,
buddy.
and so real, dude.
All right,
It's fun.
I got one last question
right.
for you. That's another 10 minutes. No, this is a quick one. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings as a whole that have influenced your life and your work?
My wife, Carrie. I think she has this really unique dynamic with me where she like believes in me, but like doesn't totally let me see how much she believes in me.
I like that. That's good.
And
That's good.
it's yeah, I think just her faith in life and me and what's possible. It's just really taught me to just like be patient and to trust, because I guess that's the thing. When we first met, I was pretty like wild and all over the place, and her patience with me and faith in me, I think, really just taught me how to like settle down and how to be patient and to have not pop optimism, but like real optimism, like faith, like belief that whatever is possible is possible.
That's the best. I love it.
And what's coming up is Rainer Maria Rilke. He's a famous German poet. He wrote this. He wrote these letters. It's called Letters to a Young Poet. It's funny. I think he was only like in his late 20s, but this kid he was writing them to were like 20, and they're all about kind of managing through suffering, existential angst, and your creative process. And it's just some of the most inspirational, like beautiful stuff that I've ever read. And I go back to it, and it helps me anytime I'm like, it's hard. Anytime it's hard, it helps me. There's this quote in that he says, and they're real letters he wrote to this kid that then they got published. And this is like in 1900, but he talks about, the pain that you're feeling is the future coming out of you. So many people think that the future is this thing outside of you coming towards you, but no, it's the future is this thing bursting out through your chest and your abdomen. And that's like what that pain is inside of you.
Wow.
And I just like can't.
Wow.
I love it, man. That's
I'm gonna have to meditate on that. I like that.
yeah. I'll send
Huh.
you a copy of the book.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Thank you.
And then a third one, I'm trying to find. I want to find something like totally different. What's a good teacher? I mean, it's obviously sounds narcissistic, but I want to say myself. You know, I used to like pray. I guess I think it was. Yeah, I was praying that that I could be the mentor for myself that I kept seeking outside from other people. That I would have like that would offer myself enough grace and like patience and kind of kindness and sweetness and like listen to me and just kind of like coach me through things that I kept fantasizing that someone else was going to be able to do for me and like help
I
me.
relate.
Yeah.
My guru chasing years,
Yeah.
I'm gonna meet the enlightened master and they're just gonna give it to me. Just touch on the forehead. You're good.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. I'm finally giving myself enough, I don't know, just grace and kind of
I love that.
space to be me and figure it out. And
Wow. I like that. That's good. Yeah. It is a beautiful thing. I've began in the last few years to have that trusting relationship with myself, because I needed a lot of mentors. I mean, I was lost at so many points in my life. Like I needed a lot of help or I would have been just a lost cause. Maybe I still am in some ways, but I
you're
mean,
not, man.
no, I'm joking. I'm not, but it's that being your own teacher and build for me, it's like building, the habit of not trying to figure something out, but just going within for the answer,
Hmm.
right? I find myself just reading less spiritual books and listening to my spiritual audiobooks and all the things. Like I used to just be constantly digesting information. And then at some point I gradually started to have that experience of just like, huh, well, what do you think, Luke? What should you do here? Do you really need to call someone or can you find that answer somewhere? And it's a practice, that hasn't come easy, but that's a really good one. No one's ever said that before. About almost 500 episodes in, I think.
Mm.
That's good. Yeah. Every time people surprise me though, but that was a good one. I like that. Sometimes it's like Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, I'm like, all right, come on, or their parents or
I like those
wife or
guys.
something,
Those guys are good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, not disparaging the greats, the avatars or anything, but yeah, man, I think many of us have more answers inside than we're willing to even acknowledge, because it does require a certain degree of self love and kind of an inverse humility, right? Where you can actually give yourself credit for who
Mm.
and where and what you are, right? Not diminish your own.
I like that inverse humility.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really all one humility, but
Yeah.
I for a long time I had this perception of that spiritual principle that was about kind of staying small and not getting too big for your britches and not
Hmm.
being ostentatious and
Hmm.
conceited, right? But it's also,
Which I also think is good as a phase in life.
yeah, I
Like
mean,
that is
and there
yeah.
is there's value in that. Like,
Yeah.
don't take yourself too seriously. Like,
Yeah.
stay humble. But the other side of humility that I find really more challenging to practice is to actually acknowledge my greatness
Hmm.
and my brilliance and my talents and my love and those things that make me. It's like I learned this in 12 steps. They describe humility as uh, paraphrasing, but essentially an honest appraisal of who
Mm.
you are and what you're all about,
Mhm.
right? Which includes all of your magnificence as
Mhm.
well. And to downplay your magnificence and your intuition, your abilities, your intelligence, talents, all that, to downplay it is actually the other side of the ego. Oh, no, I'm not all that. And
Mhm.
I do that a lot. Like, can't take a compliment. I get embarrassed. And something I'm working on is to just go, yeah, I'm fucking awesome. And there's still more work to do. There's still more evolution, that's showing me its charm. Oh, let's lean into growing even more. But man, it's good. It's good practice to look back and go, holy shit. Look at the guy I used to be. I mean, for me, it's like astonishing that I even made it out of the Maya of my early life to sit here. So man, thank you for that affirmation. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, being your own teacher. It's huge. My wife reminds me of that all the time. Like, you don't need to go out there for the answers. You have it. And I'm like, oh, okay. I forget a lot. Yeah, that's great. All right, dude, we did it. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Angelo.
Luke.
Angelo Keely, folks.